So I'm going to call the meeting to order.
I'm going to use my school teacher voice.
This is State Board of Education.
Good afternoon.
Thank you, Tammy.
I told you.
School teacher voice.
It's 12:26, calling the meeting to order. We are at Fairhaven Union Middle and High School, and I just want to start off by thanking our superintendent, Olson Farrell, as well as we had a wonderful group of teachers, administrators, board members who joined us and gave us a really grounded tour of a really nice school. I'd never been here before, and it was really nice to see all of the good work that you were doing and seeing the students engage. So thank you very much for hosting us today. We're really happy to be here. So with that, actually, did you want to say something? Yeah, we have the call to order, welcome from Superintendent Olson Farrell, roll call. So yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything, but we did have you to.
Just welcome, we're very happy to have you here and honored. Hi, I'm Brooke Olson Farrell, Superintendent in Slate Valley, and just very honored to have the State Board here and having chose us as a meeting spot to host your meeting today, and thank you.
Thank you. And then we'll do the roll call.
Okay, here we go. Brian Campion. Mohammed Job. Caleb Greenwood. Lyle Jepson.
Here.
Tammy Colby.
Here.
Tom Lovett.
Here.
Brianna Marsh.
Here.
Cynthia Stewart.
Here.
Rich Werner.
Here.
Secretary Saunders.
Here.
Jennifer Deck Samuelson.
Here, thank you. Before we get to amendments to the agenda, I did just want to take a moment, if you were with us in person and you have not signed in, if you could take a moment, because that gets reflected in the minutes, so just make sure that you sign in either now or before you leave. Thank you. I do have one amendment to the agenda. We are going to move up the special education update, which is currently scheduled for 2:40 p.m. We're going to move that up to occur right after the presentation from Slate Valley, and then just kind of adjust everything down from there. Any other amendments to the agenda? All right. Hearing none, are there any members of the public who wish to be heard? If you're with us in person, you can raise your hand, and if you're with us on the Teams platform, if you can use the hand icon to raise your hand. Oh, I see John Peltier. John, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. I just want to give the board a very brief update on something that our center launched for all educators and all Vermont citizens. We have launched a financial literacy virtual academy. This is online, asynchronous, on demand. It will give educators up to 8 hours of professional development credit. We've done this in the past. Shortly after COVID started. But the goal is to give educators some information they might find useful if they are teaching or thinking of teaching personal finance in their classroom. One of the things that's a little bit unique this time is we actually spent almost a year, about 11 months, filming a film. It's about an hour and 15-minute film called Will Vermont Students Be Left Behind? It gives a very good overview of the state of financial literacy education in Vermont today, with interviews of 7 educators that are teaching this today, 10 students who were willing to be interviewed who were taking these courses in our public high schools, and some recent graduates as well. So there's, I believe, 33 or 35 individuals, including state officials, that were interviewed as part of this film. that I think all of you on the board might find of interest, particularly at some point in the near future, you'll be looking at what should be education standards. There's some other great things in there. Dr. Carly Urban, nationally respected researcher in the space, goes over all of the research reports supporting this type of educational intervention in high school is working. Tim Ranzetta, who runs a nonprofit that provides free curriculum that's used by 120,000 educators across the nation. This is the most widely used curriculum in America in high schools, and certainly worth looking into it. And some other data on what's going on in Vermont from the FINRA Investor Education Foundation, and a big survey they do of 30,000 people every 3 years, including a statistically relevant sample in Vermont. So things that you and others might want to look into. This will be available for 120 days from October 1 to the end of January. And we already have just shy of a couple of folks of 100 already registered and taking the course. We hope it goes well beyond that. In past years, I expect to see 200 to 400 people take this. And it's about a 70-30 split, 70% educators, 30% are citizens from Vermont, and even some random professor from a college in Panama. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. So this is through Champlain College, I believe, yes?
Yes, it's from Champlain College. If you search the college's website and look under a tab, the Center for Financial Literacy webpage, and look at a tab on programming, you'll see a drop-down screen for this Vermont, the Vermont Financial Literacy Virtual Academy. And we received funding from East Rice Credit Union for this, as well as an anonymous donor.
Well, this is really a terrific resource that I'm excited about. I can see that its benefits would be far-reaching, and just really appreciate the fact that you guys have put this together and that you're making it free. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other members of the public who wish to be heard? I'm not seeing anyone. As we often do, I will scoot on and hold public comment open for just a little bit. But next, I'm going to scoot ahead, and I will entertain a motion to approve our State Board of Education draft meeting minutes from our September 17th, 2025 meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll move that onto the floor.
Thank you, Rich. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lyle. Any discussion? Oh, I did have one correction. On page 1, under item A, call to order, it said Chair Samuelson called the meeting to order at 4:21 p.m. I believe we mean it to be 12:21 p.m. perhaps, but that was the only thing that I caught. I think we adjourned at 4:21. We had a very short meeting. Any other amendments or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of our September 17th, 2025 meeting, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries. Thanks. All right, still don't see any members of the public. Board announcements, I've got a couple. I'm not sure if anyone else has any. All right, so a couple of quick announcements. One, and I'm just passing this on, the School District Redistricting Task Force has a couple of upcoming public hearings at which members of the public are invited to share their perspectives and priorities, and I'm taking this from the language that they've sent out, to help guide the task force as it develops proposals for Vermont school district boundaries. These hearings are an opportunity to learn more about what the task force is doing and inform the task force work, not to weigh in on specific district maps which are still being developed. So there is an upcoming meeting this Thursday, October 16th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Leland and Gray. And there's also a meeting October 22nd from 6 to 8 p.m. at Rutland. Both of those are either in person or there's a virtual option. So if members are not able to be there in person, you can definitely attend virtually. Also submit written comments. I know they're taking that as well as oral, and they're asking people to limit anything that they do have presented to 2 minutes. So that is my first, and then, actually, maybe that was it. Okay, and then Lyle, I was going to ask you about robotics.
Well, you'd be disappointed if I didn't talk about the iBots. So, Rutland Area Robotics will be traveling to the Battle of the Bay, which will be a couple weekends from now. And that is in Alton, Mass. And they'll be competing with probably 60 other robotics teams. The exciting thing about that event is there is a built-in event to that weekend called Girls Behind the Glass, and it is a women's-only competition where they're encouraging young women to get involved in robotics and electronics and all the things that go along with it. So there's a special scholarship that goes along with that to college, so it'll be a fun event for the iBots.
Thank you. Good luck.
Go team.
I knew I had more announcements. So my second announcement was, and Zoe had mentioned this a little bit ago, Linda Alvarez was named the Vermont 2026 Teacher of the Year. The board will recall we had 3 finalists who came and presented in August. So Linda was the business and entrepreneurship teacher at the Wyndham Regional Center in Brattleboro. She's also an adjunct professor at Vermont State University, Community College of Vermont. She serves as a Future Business Leaders of American Advisory and is a member of the Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union Special Education Parent Advisory Council. And I believe she is the first career technical education educator to receive this award in Vermont. So just on behalf of the board, wanted to extend our congratulations to Linda, and I'm sure she will represent Vermont well in the coming year.
Absolutely.
Okay, I will circle back one last time for public comment, keeping in mind we do have some again at the end of our meeting. I don't see anyone. Okay, so next we have the introduction of State Board of Education Attorney Sarah Buxton. Again, the board will recall we were given money in the last legislative session to help the board retain an attorney to assist us with our various responsibilities, most primarily going through our rules and coming up with a plan to update them or sunset them or transfer them. But Sarah is also here to help the board if we have legal issues that might arise. And so we had put this out to bid. We have Sarah with us. Sarah has been with the board before, and she has just been delightful as a person. She is a proud graduate of Fairhaven and has really worked nicely with the board as we updated our education quality standards and Rule Series 2200, which pertains to independent school approvals. So welcome, Sarah. I'm glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for orchestrating this visit as my first meeting to be at Fairhaven. So I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of folks here who were contributed to helping me to be successful as a student, and then of course, in my career. Thank you, of course, to Mr. Jepson, who was my principal here at Fairhaven when I graduated. But I just wanted to say a few things to the board members just with regard to my role here. So representing an organizational client is a little different than representing an individual as a client. And so there's a specific rule in our professional rules of conduct that we must abide by as attorneys that address how lawyers represent organizations. And so I just wanted to let you know that basically this may be a common sense to you, but I represent the board, which is an entity, and not any of you as individual members. So my professional duties of loyalty, confidentiality, communication, those professional duties, they extend to the organization, but through you. So I owe those duties to you as members of the board. On a day-to-day basis, I'm going to be receiving my direction through Jennifer as the designated organizational leader. But Jennifer and I have talked about my role and agree that I should and will be available to all of you should you have questions or need assistance as you navigate either your role as a board member or some of the responsibilities of the board. Keep in mind, though, that since the board is my client, I can't keep secrets between you. Not that I'm going to go and relay all the things we talk about, because you as a member also enjoy that confidentiality, but I can't keep secrets or work at cross interests. I can't provide counsel or specific legal services that are contrary to the interests of the board. So I just wanted to lay that as a point of understanding, and as I similarly invite you, along with Jennifer, to use me, because you do have my services available to you now, and I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity, and love the work that you do, and love the prospect of our relationship together. So thank you.
Yep. And Sarah had also mentioned that she might be doing some workshops for the board periodically on like open meeting law, public records requests, just to keep us fresh.
Yeah, so to that point, I know some of you are chairs of your individual committees. I've done some trainings recently on open meeting law, Public Records Act, ethics for municipalities and for some of the associations of, the town clerks and Vermont League of Cities and Towns. So if you have one-off questions, or if you want just a quick primer, I have material already available, but we've talked about doing some sort of organizational trainings from time to time, just so that everybody is fresh on public records and open meeting laws and your responsibilities. So I'm happy to provide those individually, and then of course down the road as a group.
Questions or comments?
For clarification for the public, I was 5 years old when I was her principal. I remember that in her senior year, Sarah received the Principal of the Year award, so she has since then been very successful despite the fact that I was her principal, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't say enough how much this school and the whole district helped me to become successful, and I am so pleased today, having walked through this school and actually not really having seen a lot of it in the last couple of decades, but to see just the success of the students, my nieces and nephews, my sister's a teacher here in this district. I just feel so proud to be sitting here and watching the teachers of today and the professionals of today helping the students of tomorrow. You just have done a wonderful job, and I'm so proud to be a Slater.
Thank you, Sarah. All right, so next I'm going to turn it to our students for the student report. I'm not sure if we have Caleb with us. I know Brianna's here.
Hello.
Oh, Caleb is here. Excellent. Welcome, Caleb.
I just joined in halfway through the introduction. So, hi, I'm Caleb. I'm virtual today. Fairhaven's very, very far from me. I'm up in Troy, so it was a pretty far journey for me. But also, I had a pretty important physics class today, so that's why I'm not in attendance.
And Caleb, are you able to turn your camera on, or is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll go find one right now if you want Brianna to start.
Do you say we have Brianna start?
Yeah, I'm gonna go find the camera right now.
Okay, all right. Brianna, is that okay with you?
Yeah, of course. All right, I want to make sure you guys were able to see me. So I wasn't able to attend the last one, and sadly I have to attend this one virtual because Fairhaven is also 2 hours away from me, and I have an important soccer game tonight, so I'd have to really just drive there to just drive back for my soccer game, so I decided to just attend this virtual. But recently, not much has been happening with me personally. I've just been taking a bunch of classes, and this is definitely my hardest year yet. But it's going good so far, and we're almost done with soccer because we only have probably 2 weeks left, and then we got to start playoffs, so hopefully that goes well. And that's really it just on my life recently. a little bit on like the phone bill policy, because that's like a lot that like has been talked about. I feel like honestly that has started to die down a lot at my school. So we used to talk about it a lot, but then all of a sudden like it just like stopped getting talked about, and I feel like students kind of almost forgot about it, and like teachers don't bring it up anymore. So I feel like there is still a little bit of confusion around there, but I think they're thinking that it's going to get enacted next year.
And Brianna, remind me, what is the policy this year at your school?
Yeah, so we actually don't have a policy right now. We just have that, like, we've been just talking about it, and like teachers have been trying to say like, hey, like keep your phone away because like it's gonna like happen next year and you're gonna want to get used to it. But like there hasn't been an actual like rule that's been set in place or anything. But I am at Riverbend, so our technology center, and over there we have a rule where you cannot have your phone out and it has to stay away the full time. So I feel like at Riverbend it's a lot more enacted, and because we can't have it out and nobody can have it out. Ooh, sorry about that. But otherwise, yeah, nothing's really happening at my home school, so Oxbow.
All right. And am I remembering, Brianna, you have to leave early today so that you can go to your soccer game, correct?
Yeah, so I have to leave around like 2:25, if that's okay, which is hopefully gonna align with the break. But yeah, anytime between there, I just have to be out on the field at 3.
All right. Well, good luck today with your game. Any comments or questions for Brianna? All right. And we will look forward to meeting you in person in the spring. So Caleb, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, I have my camera plugged in, but it keeps, like I click to turn it on, and then it's trying to make me use my camera mic instead of the one I'm already using.
All right, no worries.
I'm trying to figure that out. But I can just do this for now and then figure it out after, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, today the reason I was not here in the first couple minutes was because we do something at our school called senior folio presentations or folio exhibitions. So at Lake Region, we have this set of like specifically designated assignments that are called folio tasks, and they're basically ways to help students develop like, not necessarily life skills, but skills that are applicable for the future and like things to use just in life. So like, you know, team building, critical thinking, things of that nature. And every single senior has to do it no matter what, like whether they're going to college, trades, just going straight into the workforce, they still have to do one. And basically how it works is you take like multiple versions of the folio task, because there are 4 separate types. So each one like is designated to a different type of skill. So there's, for example, like creator innovator. So it's like developing like that creativity type of aspect. But then there's things like informed thinker, where it's a lot more research based and like getting your mind in that research aspect. And then there's other ones that are more involved in teamwork, things of that nature. So you take a compilation of all the ones that you've done, not all of them, because you do like a lot of them, but like an example or two from each category, and explain, you know, how you've changed from freshman year, like what things you might have struggled in versus now, like how successful you are in those things that you might have struggled in the past, and things like that. So I had attended one of my friends because his was today, which was fortunately, it was fortunate but also unfortunate, because last week, like 7 of us had them at the same exact time on the same exact day, so we weren't able to attend each other's, but luckily we were all able to get together to attend his, so that worked out pretty well. And yeah, we were just there to support him, see how he's changed, because we can put in like, you know, pictures and whatever else, because it's also just about you as a person. So like you put in like whatever your future goals are, or things like that. So like, for example, he is looking at going to the Air Force Academy, so we talked a lot about that and the whole application process, things of that nature. But he also talked about like sports and how that's shaped him, things of that nature. And it's a good thing just that I got to do it early. I was glad I did, because I didn't have it like looming over me until like March. Because some people, they do like roughly 3 batches. They do one group like October, one group November, and one group in like March, April. And I'm just glad I got to do it early, because if I had that looming over me, along with whatever else is coming in the spring, I don't think I would have been too happy.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'm sure you're sort of in the thick of thinking about colleges and going to look at colleges.
Yeah, I just completed my FAFSA and the VSAC one. So I still have the CSS profile, but other than that, it's just scholarship stuff.
All right.
Most of my Common App is pretty close, so that's good.
Well, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Caleb? All right. Well, thank you both for the updates. It's great to hear what's going on, and we look forward to hearing more next month about what's going on over the next few weeks. So at this point, we have a presentation from Slate Valley Unified Union School District. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Olson Farrell, if you want to come sit up here.
We're going to have multiple people involved in this presentation today, so. Good afternoon. I'm Brooke Olson Farrell, and I'm the proud superintendent of 9 years of the Slate Valley School District. We're very excited to share with you all the wonderful things that are happening in Slate Valley. We have a lot that we are really happy and proud to share. So this slide gives you a quick snapshot of Slate Valley by the numbers. We serve approximately 1,200 students across 5 schools in 6 towns. The towns of Benson, Castleton, Fairhaven, Hubbardton, Orwell, and West Haven. Our average class size is about 16 students, and we have about 280 dedicated staff members. Financially, we manage a budget around $30 million, which is spending per long-term weighted ADM of $11,565, which is one of the lowest in the state. These are our 5 schools. We have Benson Village School, Castleton Elementary School, Orwell Village School, and Fairhaven Grade School. Those buildings are all K through 6 buildings, with also Castleton and Fairhaven house our district pre-K programs. Fairhaven Union Middle and High School is a 7 through 12 building. This became a 7 through 12 building approximately 4 years ago, when we made the really thoughtful decision as a district, due to the financial realities, declining enrollment, our infrastructure needs, to move our 7th and 8th graders from our elementary school buildings to the high school campus. We were able to renovate a portion of this building using ESSER funds following the COVID-19 pandemic. And this has allowed us to create a more cohesive 7 through 12 experience for our students. Our mission is to ensure every student achieves academic excellence by providing support and opportunities needed for success in school, college, and career. And we do this through our vision, which is we want all students to be engaged in rigorous, hands-on, individualized learning. Our work is centered around 4 goals, which are part of our strategic plan. Our strategic plan runs through 2028, and those 4 goal areas are to develop college and career readiness. We want all of our students to graduate with a plan. It might not be college, but they have a plan, whether that's technical education, the military, the workforce, and we want them to have the skills to succeed beyond high school. So our second goal is around establishing community engagement, service, and partnerships. And our third goal is proactively managing school environments and fiscal accountability. That's really important in our school district. We are a fiscally conservative district. And then maintaining a focus on recruiting, developing, and retaining exemplary educators and staff. At Slate Valley, our tagline is "Our School, Your Future." And that reflects who we are and what we believe. Every day we invest in students, empowering them to reach their full potential. And here's a little video of what our students have to say about our tagline.
Our school, your future.
Our school is everyone's school, but we lead with our future. Yeah, that actually makes sense. Being created by them. Yeah.
It's the school we own, but you come to the school to learn or something.
Okay.
Yeah, because my mom says, I asked her what I should be, and I said, should I be video game school? And then she says, I think you would be because you are pretty creative. Like when we grow up in the school, we learn how to read. We get better at reading if we already know how.
And so when you're in school, do you think that's going to help you? It's somehow when you're older, like in the future?
Yes.
So how might that help you?
Because like if you have a kid, then it can help you like teach your kid how to do this stuff so that they are better in their school. So it's like our school that's only school right now, but our future, like our grades that we go up and like the difference what we learn.
Is that going to help you, you think, in somehow?
Yeah. Level 1. Is that if you learn something here, you can become great at it, or something, you can become great at it in another. Like, our school makes your future.
And how?
Because it lets you learn about the stuff you don't know, but you're gonna learn it. You want to be the school, but we get to choose to be.
Okay.
I actually agree with that.
All right.
The teachers and the kids' school, but then it's only your future, and you learn.
It's our school, we're all put together, and we're making our future.
And with you joining, if you're in, say, like 6th grade, you'll be joining if you're coming here, and it'll be your future. Same with like starting here, middle school and high school.
Love it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Our school, it's our school right now, but we're making it the future for the younger kids.
That makes some important what we would do outside of school after we graduate.
I think it means like the people run the school, but it's our choice on our future. Like we take what we learn from the school and put it as a foundation to build off of what we want to know and learn as we grow. Like a tree. This school is planting you, the seed. And it gives you the stuff you need to grow into who you become.
So to share some of our successes over the past year or two, our staff retention rate has soared from 78% to 92%, and we've had a 92% staff retention rate for the past 2 years. So we're very proud of all of the work that has gone into that. Additionally, our elementary students have achieved notable gains in ELA and math, with many scores above the state average, and some grades ranking among the region's highest. We have a 92% four-year graduation rate, and we have numerous flexible education pathways that have really enabled our students to explore diverse learning experiences, and you're going to hear a little bit about those in a few minutes. Our high school bowling team, wrestling team, girls basketball team, and football team all won state championships last year. We've increased the number of students tuitioning into our district over the last several years, and we've increased the student attendance rate each year over the last 3 years to an average attendance rate of 93%. We've also worked really hard, and this is part of our staff retention and recruitment strategy on reducing the number of staff on temporary teaching licenses. At one point in time, we had 20% of our licensed staff on provisional or emergency licenses. Another point of pride is our community outreach and communication, thanks to our fabulous communications coordinator, Lisa Cacciatore. But we've really worked hard under her leadership to make sure that we are building trust with our community, engaging in transparent communication that's consistent and strengthens partnerships, and that we have a unified tone about our district. As I said previously, staff culture, recruitment, and retention has really been one of our focal points over the last several years. We're engaged in several Grown Your Own teacher and leadership pipeline programs with apprenticeships and mentorships. Some of those we're partnering with the Agency of Education and Department of Labor on. Others we are partnering directly with VTSU Castleton on. We have worked hard to provide competitive starting salaries to our staff and really worked on staff resilience and well-being. It's something that all of our principals in school buildings are really committed to, and something that we measure 3 times a year. And right now, after 3 years of consistently working in this area, we are above the national benchmarks for staff resilience and culture benchmarks. So, and that's further evidence of that is also our retention rate. We also have switched to a teacher and administrator evaluation model that is focused on the 5 Ds or 4 Ds for the Center of Educational Leadership out of the University of Washington. And it's really focused on educator growth and growth in certain areas. And it's more of a coaching partnership. And we've been able to really engage in that work with some of our instructional coaches and administrators, and you're going to hear a little bit about that coming up. And these are some of the things our staff say about working in Slate Valley.
We're a very tight-knit community in Slate Valley.
You could tell right away that this was the place that I was going to be able to kind of stay forever. And
I've always been able to grow here at Slate Valley, and that supports students.
I enjoy the students the most.
I feel really supported and respected.
The students keep me motivated.
I love the schools in Slate Valley.
Everyone I work with loves what they do. I would describe Slate Valley as energetic,
collaborative,
caring,
community,
compromiso,
potential,
supportive,
and compassion.
And now I'd like to turn it over to two of our instructional coaches, Kristen Whitman and Jessica Thurston.
Thank you, Brooke. We are fortunate to follow that video, as we would echo many of the same sentiments. And much of what was shared in the video has been an integral part of the development of our coaching culture in our Slate Valley district. At Slate Valley, we have intentionally fostered a culture of coaching. This coaching structure extends across all 4 of our elementary schools. We're proud to share that over the last 5 years, 90% of our pre-K through grade 6 educators and interventionists have partnered with an instructional coach for an instructional coaching cycle.
On the colorful diagram, you can see where we're connecting the partnering that we do with teachers and interventionists and how we feel that has had a positive impact on not just staff retention, as Brooke talked about, but also improved outcomes for students, and also has been integral in the development and implementation of what we would consider a robust MTSS framework. The partnership, and as Jessica shared about being in so many classrooms doing embedded coaching, we feel like that helps us with what the current reality is, how curriculum's landing. We get a lot of feedback that can be actionable because we're in so many classrooms. And so that partnership really just helps us, it's cyclical, to be able to make our district even better. So our coaching belief is for teachers to feel supported and successful. And we've approached this goal through personalized instructional cycles with teachers in support of our continuous improvement. And this year, we're going to continue this personalization through matching coaching cycle goals to each teacher's professional goals. And so we'll hand it off to Casey O'Meara, our Director of Curriculum, and he's going to speak to the strategic plan and its connection to educator goals. Thank you.
So as Brooke mentioned, so first, thank you, Kristen, and thank you, Jessica. Brooke shared our mission. So to have students successfully complete standards that would have them become career ready or college ready using a comprehensive system of supports through the vision that she articulated required that we become purposeful about the supervision evaluation model that we wanted to have in place across our system. And so we've intentionally made certain that we have an instructional growth model. So as the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment, instruction is the focal point of our supervision and evaluation model. We recognize that quality teaching is the best school-based approach we can take to improving student outcomes. In order to do that, as Kristen and Jessica spoke about, we needed to create a collaborative model that allowed educators to use each other as resources, use instructional coaches, allowing administrators to collaborate with educators and instructional coaches. And so in order to have this continuous improvement approach, we needed reciprocal accountability and a model where we would partner together across the different layers that you see in the visual in this presentation, as well as allowing us to collaborate within those different layers. And so this visual identifies an instructional growth through line of how it is we set our goals and how it is we monitor those goals and hold ourselves accountable to instructional growth across our organization. So our commitment to our school, your future, is really making certain that we have that mission alive, and that when we are working together, we're talking about the instructional next steps we'll take in terms of students achieving or exceeding standards through a multi-tiered system of support to become college and career ready. Next slide. So when we thought about your future as part of that motto Brooke spoke of, there were different unique experiences we create for students. And so We're going to highlight those now, and I am going to hand it over to Eliza LeBrun, and she'll speak about community-connected learning.
Hello, my name is Eliza LeBrun, and I am the Work-Based Learning Coordinator here at Fairhaven Union Middle and High School. You'll have to bear with me, I'm a little nervous. I want to show you 2 short videos about some of the things that our kids are doing. Do you want to go ahead and play the first one?
Some of the things I have learned from this experience are how to be polite, use manners, speak to adults properly, and overall learn respect and responsibilities of the work, environment.
So this student is a senior. He is now working for the town of Fairhaven in their highway department. He had an interview with the town manager and his supervisor, and he has been showing motivation and a strong work ethic. He doesn't have a vehicle, so he takes the bus to school every day and walks to the highway department, then walks back to attend his classes in the afternoon. I have one other video.
Hello, my name is Tyler Harrison. I'm a senior and I was in the Innovation Entrepreneurship class. I made a poem to what's called the greeting card for adults. And I had to present it to people from around here in the public and the bank, and they pretty much gave me their opinion on my product and helped me figure out what I can do to move forward with it in the future.
So this student is also a senior this year. He participated in the Innovation and Entrepreneurship class his junior year, just last year. And he created a product that he believed in so much that part of the panel that came was our local M&T Bank representative. And he's had several meetings with her this year about how to move forward with his product to potentially create a new Vermont business. Last year, we also had one other student. You can see her picture there on her horse. She's an accomplished rodeo competitor. She earned science credit by applying biology and animal science standards to her work with her horses. Her success shows how academic learning can connect directly to personal passion and real-world experience. We're continuing to build partnerships with local businesses and community organizations to create hands-on opportunities that connect students' classroom learning with real-world applications. At Fairhaven, our career explorations, adulting, innovation and entrepreneurship, and work-based learning courses provide pathways that prepare students to join Vermont's workforce with confidence and purpose. Our students represent the future of Vermont. They're the entrepreneurs, applied scientists, and skilled technicians who will help our communities grow and thrive. When we value student passion, build community partnerships, and remain flexible, we aren't just graduating students, we're shaping Vermont's future. Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Beth Nicholson, our social studies teacher, and Lori DeLance, our school resource officer.
Good afternoon. I'm social studies teacher Beth Nicholson, and this is our school resource officer, Lori DeLance. Together, we co-teach law enforcement and public service. This is a junior-senior level elective in the social studies department. This course was designed as an experiential learning experience for students that examines careers in law enforcement, the armed forces, and other public services such as firefighting, emergency medical services, dispatch, game wardens, and so forth. Throughout a variety of hands-on learning opportunities, fingerprinting, CPR, running radar and LiDAR, investigating crashes, community speakers from various fields, and field trips, students learn about what goes into training for and carrying out careers working with the public in our communities. Next is family and consumer science teacher Jennifer Clement.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Clement. I teach family consumer science here at Fairhaven. I teach 5 different classes over the course of the year. They range from a basic foods class, ethnic foods, which goes over each country's, advanced baking, I teach child development, and a fashion design class. Each month, my class, they do a community service activity where they cook over 50 meals for the food shelf, and then we bring them over there. I have a great passion for teaching family consumer science. It's a lot more than cooking and sewing. It's so much more. They prepare students for life, their practical life, hands-on experience that these kids really need. They make them capable adults. Students learn essential life skills like meal planning, nutrition, child development, and sewing. Family consumer science empowers young people to lead productive lives, make a positive impact on their communities. It bridges academic learning with real-life application, something every student should benefit from. So many of our schools are losing this program, and we need to figure out how to keep it in schools. It's so essential. I'd like to introduce our digital arts teacher, Gina Chang. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gina Chang, and I'm the digital arts teacher. I had already met you guys. It's a little strange introducing myself again. So I teach digital arts for middle school and high school. For middle school, it is on a quarterly basis. I get a new batch of students every quarter. And for high school, I get them every semester, for a semester at a time. And basically, we build a strong foundation in design by learning industry-level softwares like Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, which designers, all sorts of designers, whether it be graphic designer, layout designers, fashion designers, it is the industry standard right now. So they're using Mac computers as well, which are also industry standard. We explore technical skills, layout skills, color theory, and visual storytelling. They tackle hands-on challenges that blend design thinking with real-world skill building. And one example of this is our current t-shirt design project, where the students are challenged to design shirts that inspire, that encourage, and to just make people smile with their product. They're not just designing, they're learning production tools. They're going through each step as if they were running their own t-shirt business, and producing the t-shirts in-house. And if you see over here, those are some examples, some design examples, layout examples, and the final product examples. And I learned that when we do real hands-on work and there's a product at the end, there's a buy-in that you don't get anywhere else. So I'm very happy to teach this class. And my goal is to prepare students not just for the next class, but for the real world, you know? Equipping them with skills, mindset, and especially courage to create something meaningful. So, thank you. I'd like to introduce Christian.
Hello. I'm Chris. I'm a retired middle school teacher. I taught math, science, and social studies in this district for 35 years. And yes, Sarah was in my class. I do have a story to tell about her, but Brooke said I only had 2 minutes to talk today.
He's the reason I became a lawyer.
We could let you go for longer than 2 minutes.
Her face is very red, so it's got to be a good story.
Okay, I'll tell the story. I don't even remember what she was talking about, but she was arguing some point in class one day.
Defending Crispus Attucus.
Crispus Attucus, okay. She remembers. I did not. And I said to her,
Good teacher.
Sarah, you should become a lawyer because you can argue any point. And apparently she took offense to my comment and went home and let her mother know that. Several years later, I got a phone call from her mother saying, Sarah owes you an apology because today she got accepted into law school. That wasn't in my notes here, and I hope that doesn't count as my 2 minutes. But I work 1 day a week now, which is not a tough schedule, with the middle school building project. You can see our woodshed up on the upper left-hand corner there. I work with small groups of students, and we build tables, bookcases, computer charging stands, things that teachers would like to have in their classroom. Basically it's a hands-on class. I try to make it interdisciplinary. We start our day, we have a meeting, we go over the safety rules, we have an academic check to make sure everybody's keeping up with their classes. And then we have a mini lesson. It might be on measurement. Yesterday we had a lesson on angles. It might be about trees, different kinds of wood that they produce. At the end of the day, we do some journal writing, which they share with their language arts teacher. I also ask students to design and build a project that they can take home with them. You can see in the middle up the top there, Nora made a tissue box, I think, for her grandmother. Down in the bottom in the middle, Peyton made a table, and he was so excited about it, he asked me if he could take a picture of it and send it to his mother at work. And I thought, well, you are going to be home in 2 hours. But he was so excited about it, I said yes, because I think that's the way school should be. I think kids should be excited about what they're doing and wanting to share that with other people. That's about all I have to say there. Next. Oh, okay.
But I have another video.
Okay. You want me to introduce it? Yeah. The next thing is the Great Adventure Project, which we do here. It started many years ago in Orwell with Sarah called the East Creek Project, and Lisa put together this video.
GAP is a Great Adventure Project. We've done this kind of work for 39 years now. We are financed by the South Lake Champlain Trust, which goes to the Vermont Community Foundation. They've been very generous to us over the years. Basically, it's an environmental studies program. We take students out into the field, we collect data, compare that with previous years, and write up our findings each year. We're looking at basically the South Lake Champlain drainage basin, because whatever happens on the land shows up in the water.
During a GAP camp, we get the chance to take kids and explore our own backyard. The project is funded through the Vermont Community Foundation, and specifically a grant that I have to apply to every year. It's called the Southern Lake Champlain Fund. And so every spot we go to during this week-long camp falls within the Lake Champlain drainage basin. So we spent some time kayaking on the waterways, and we talked about how Lake Bomazene is connected to Lake Champlain. We talked about how Glen Lake is connected. And then we take a couple days and we go hiking to get that bird's eye view of the drainage basin. And it's something I look forward to every year. It's the way I think middle school students should be learning. It's a rigorous work. It's physically demanding. It pushes kids' limits a little bit. It challenges them. It's great to watch different students interact with each other in different ways. When we come back every day, we do some substantial writing. But the kids are writing and reflecting on what they saw, the questions that naturally popped into their heads. It's something I'm really happy to be a part of.
And I think next I have to introduce Jeremy. He's talking about his design program. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you guys for coming by and seeing me this afternoon in the design lab. I'm Jeremy Vanderkern. I run the design program. And just to tell you a little bit about it, design is an engineering and technology course that is open to students in grades 7 and 8. It serves approximately 160 students on an every other day schedule for 2 years. Students are able to utilize a fully functional makerspace to explore STEAM topics such as 3D printing, laser cutting, robotics, electronics, soldering, biomimicry, video production, textiles, polymers, and woodworking. Students practice working in small groups and participate in state and national competitions to solve real-world design challenges, such as First Lego Robotics, Future City, World of 8 Billion Video Contest, Vermont's own Green Up Day, and the NASA Tech Rise Challenge. We have several sponsors for the program. They include Veep, Vermont NEA, the World of 8 Billion, Samsung, Solve for Tomorrow, and NASA. Tomorrow, 100 8th graders are going over to the UVM Castleton campus to participate in the VSAC STEM Fair, where they will explore STEM careers in the Green Mountain State. And I am pleased to introduce Ms. Jen Paquette, our middle school principal.
Thank you, Jeremy. Jennifer Paquette, co-principal here. I spend most of my time with middle school students. I have to say you are the quietest, most respectful audience I've spoken to in quite some time. So thank you very much. I'm going to talk a little bit about our Lifetime Activities program. It goes way back, before my time, to Castleton Elementary and Castleton Village School. It started as a ski program for 5th and 6th grade. And then when those 5th and 6th graders moved on to the middle school, which was Castleton Village School at the time, parents really wanted it to continue. So it did. And people, I can't take any credit. Robin Fox, who was a longtime educator, Linda Pelletier, who was a principal, Trevor Kelson, and myself helped turn it into a district-wide initiative. It was a little bit chaotic. We'd bus everybody into Fairhaven Grade School and then move them all into different groups and send them off to their activities. When we transitioned here to a district middle school, there were some bumps. We lost a little momentum, but it still happened. And now we're in our 4th year as a district middle school doing this program, and it's slowly regaining momentum. We build great connections with the community. We strengthen the bonds between our teachers and our students, strengthen the bonds among students, and it really can increase the feeling of belonging for all of our students. So martial arts, horseback riding, fishing, woodworking. We drag Chris back in for that again. So a multitude of activities. And with that, I will turn it over to Helen Alexander, our 8th grade team leader and social studies teacher, to talk about our student-led conference.
Thanks, Jen. Hello, I'm Helen Alexander. I teach 8th grade social studies. I'm also the team leader for the 8th grade. Our student-led conferences empower middle schoolers to reflect, build self-awareness, and develop self-advocacy skills through meaningful collaboration between students and staff and presenting to parents and guardians. The middle school students, supported by staff, lead their own conferences to reflect on learning and growth. Before becoming a district middle school, many of our individual middle schools held student-led conferences. The transition to the unified school district model disrupted that practice, leading us back to traditional parent-teacher conferences. While traditional parent conferences provide valuable connections with parents, we found that it was impossible to meet all the parents of 80 to 100 students in each middle school grade. So, we strongly believe that at this age, students benefit most from opportunities to reflect, build self-awareness and relationships, and develop self-advocacy skills. Student-led conferences are an ideal structure to support these goals. They require thoughtful preparation, collaboration, and teamwork between staff and students. And the outcomes are well worth the effort and the investment in our students. Please welcome Chris Benway and Carrie-Ann Walcott.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Benway. I'm the Director of Special Services for Slate Valley, and this is Carrie-Ann Walcott. I've been in the district 27 years. Carrie-Ann's been in the district 22 years. And I just want to underscore that point that Brooke made about retention, because I think that's part of what makes Slate Valley so very special, is that how we've been able to recruit and retain really skilled professionals and support staff, and that's something that we are very, very proud of. In support of the district's mission and goals for student, family, and community engagement, we've been working hard to create and sustain innovative partnerships and programs to ensure that all Slate Valley students come to school ready to learn and to thrive. As Brooke mentioned in her introduction, and it's been underscored in other publications, our district is one of the lowest per pupil spenders in the state. So these activities that we're sharing with you on these slides all happen outside of our local school budget. Almost all of these activities are funded through private donations, through competitive grants that we have applied for, and through a lot of beating the pavement and asking community resources for help. We're providing these essentials to address the growing number of students who are experiencing housing insecurities, economic struggles, and food insecurities. And as I said, we're doing almost all of this without impacting the local school budget. Over a decade ago, we started a program called the Snack Sack program. It was actually picked up by the Rutland United Way, and we've become, they sponsor us on an annual basis. We receive a community impact grant. It started as a $20,000 grant and has been reduced over the years, but we continue to receive about $10,000 annually through that organization. To address the food insecurities and shortages and to ensure that students have access to a healthy snack or easy to prepare meal on weekends or over school breaks, we pack over 100 bags for distribution on an average basis, and during the school year it can be anywhere from 100 to 160 bags going to different families. Carrie has here some examples she's going to take out of some of the little snacks that we provide, and we're able to augment those snack sacks with fresh fruits and vegetables through a Veggie Van Go program that we run through on a monthly basis here at Fairhaven Union Middle and High School. We serve as one of the largest community distribution sites in southern Vermont for fresh fruits and vegetables. We partner with the Vermont Food Bank, and this opportunity is open to all of the communities of Slate Valley as well as the Poultney community as well. To help support our local community food banks as well as to supplement the resources of our Snack Sack program, we partner with our local EMS to organize a Stuff and Ambulance annual food drive. You'll see us in November out in front of Shaw's. We also, during the football playoffs, we do a Super Bowl, S-U-P-E-R, bowl food collection, and that is a friendly competition between our schools. And whoever raises the greatest pounds of food is the recipient of a school-wide celebration, which is also donated by another community partner. So that usually is a very exciting time. Through these donations and grants, we also operate a program which we call Back to School with Confidence, and that's to ensure that all of our students come to school with a sense of pride on their first day, and that they're coming equipped with all the essentials for a successful first day, whether that means a new pair of sneakers, a fresh new haircut, a new outfit, and school supplies, whatever is needed to help make their first day successful and to give them that sense of pride in being a Slate Valley student. Through the gracious donations of community partners, these small gestures provide great benefits to a very vulnerable population of kiddos. And we continue this support throughout the school year with programs such as the walk-in closet, where we have personal care necessities and weather-appropriate clothing that can be made available to students in need. In Slate Valley, we also strive to make sure that our newest families and students also feel welcome. And to that end, we've offered events for young families and their preschool-age children on topics of interest. We've partnered with our local community libraries. And in recent years, our potty talks have on strategies and supports for potty training have brought some of the largest crowds to our parent engagement events. We actually, at our last event, we had over 30 people, and we had one family that had 3 generations that were present. Child, mom, and grandma were all there to help support and tackling that next developmental milestone. So it's actually a panel discussion that we have, and we're very fortunate. We have an OT who's a specialist on the incontinence project for UVM. We have a local healthcare provider, one of our school nurses, our early childhood educators all contribute, and it's just a really nice opportunity to welcome families, to give them some introduction to our school district. And actually, we've collected families from other districts to come and visit and engage in those activities too. So they're some of the biggest attended events. The next slide that Lisa's going to switch to includes a list of some of the contributors and partners that have graciously made contributions towards our efforts. We are exceptionally proud of all of our community partners and grateful for the way that everybody comes together to support all of the children and make sure that all of their basic needs are met. As I said before, our goal in Slate Valley is to fill each child's pack with the tool and resources that they need to be successful at school and in life. And so to remind you of these efforts and to show appreciation for the work that you all do to support Slate Valley students and the work that you all do to support all of Vermont students. And through one of our gracious contributors, we have a grant that has provided us some Slate Valley bags to all of our students. This is also something that we use to distribute our snack packs. So we have a Slate Valley bag for each of you that Carrie Ann is handing out. We thank you very much for the opportunity to have you here at Fairhaven and in Slate Valley. And I'd like tonight to introduce Julie Finnegan, who is the chair of the Slate Valley School Board.
Thank you very much. So I'm Julie Finnegan. I'm also a proud Slater as well. And I am, oh, hello, Mr. Worthing. and Mr. Worthing. A proud Slater as well. I am currently the school board chair. I've been on my local school board starting in Castleton for 15 years. And I am the director of the Upward Bound program at Vermont State University, Castleton. So you have a handout in front of you that kind of gives you the global picture of what is available in the state. But here at Fairhaven, they're very lucky to have both Upward Bound and VSAC Gear Up program. Gives you some specifics on there about Fairhaven-specific data for both of those grants. And it also gives you the statewide data for both of those grants. Upward Bound has 5 Upward Bound programs in the state of Vermont, serving 25 Vermont high schools and 363 students a year. So it's a pretty large program. And then VSAC Gear Up was just refunded for their next Gear Up 5 grant. And they're also a statewide grant that VSAC houses, and they're lucky to have here at Fairhaven. And then, I don't know if you want to talk about those, but we do have the, as you know, statewide early college and dual enrollment programs that are really close to us as we're in VTSU's backyard. So.
And that's where I was going to start, that Fairhaven High School is geographically unique in that VTSU Castleton is in our backyard. So we typically range between 20 to 30% of our senior class in early college. This year we have 15 students, 13 of which are at Castleton, 2 that are in CCV. So it really broadens opportunities for our seniors. They're taking right now up to 33 different courses, and it's a great opportunity. Our dual enrollment students, which extends to 11th and 12th grade, is the same. We currently have 22 students in dual enrollment across 5 different locations or 5 different classes, 2 of which we house right here with our own teachers being the dual enrollment certified teacher. So it's a great opportunity and a great connection that we have with VTSU and other colleges in the state.
So awesome. So, and then we would like to introduce our last video, which is Our School's Your Future Again, which is a amazing video that Lisa put together using AI, which I have been working a lot with lately through Upward Bound as well.
AI voice.
AI voice, pretty
You
cool.
want to hear me sing it.
Right. pretty cool though, the things that you can do out there when used appropriately and ethically to use AI to produce a great video. So go ahead.
Yeah, this will wrap up. Right?
Yeah, wrap it up. Thank you.
We're building a future strong and bright, investing in students, shining light from Fairhaven up to Orwell's town. We're living in our schools, we won't back out. We see the games, we feel the pride. Schools are climbing side by side, graduate soaring, dreams take flight, working hard to make it right. Oh, we stand for learning, we stand for change. Through every challenge, we'll rearrange a budget that builds, a future that grows. For every student, the success it shows. Costs go up, but we make it fair. With tax relief, we show we care. 5 buildings, more love, a plan so wise. Education shining in students' eyes. The halls are filled with laughter and dreams. State champion, the best teams. Teachers growing, giving their best. In Slate Valley, we ace the test. Oh, we stand for learning. We stand for change through every challenge. Oh, we stand for learning. We stand for change through every challenge. We'll rearrange a budget that builds, a future that grows. For every student, the success it shows.
better tomorrow. It starts today. Together we stronger in every way. For every town, for every child. Let's make it happen, Slave Valley style.
So as you can see, we're a very proud school district, and we thank you for having your meeting here this month.
Thank you all. It was a comprehensive presentation, but really gave a really nice look at the school, the supervisory union, and everything that you're offering. So thank you. So I think now we're going to scoot ahead and we're going to do the special education update.
Excellent, great. As the team's coming up, I'll give you a little bit of background. Today, we'll be providing the findings from our recent special education report. This was a requirement of Act 73 to evaluate the current state of special education delivery. We did not approach this as a compliance requirement. We approached this as a way to engage with educators across the state and our subject matter experts across divisions at the Agency of Education to really think deeply about how we're meeting the needs of students with disabilities and think really broadly around how to strengthen our overall education system. So we'll walk through today a pretty comprehensive presentation that's looking at programmatic findings along with some of the financial findings. This work is directly informing our planning process, and so we'll talk with you in our discussion around how we're using these findings to inform future areas of inquiry and focus support from the Agency of Education. So today we have a team who will be providing this information. So we're joined by Erin Davis, our Chief Academic Officer, Cassie Santo, our State Director of Special Education. Jill Burks-Campbell will join us in a minute. She's our Deputy Secretary and also Chief of Operations. And we have a number of folks from our finance team who have also supported. So Ted Gates has joined us along with Katie Smith. We can get deeper into the financial analysis along with a Medicaid review of how those funds are used. We also have Andrew Proughton, who will be joining us virtually. He had another board meeting earlier today, but he is available in the conversation to answer more questions around the workforce challenges and the plans underway to strengthen the workforce development. So with that, I will turn it over to Cassie Santo. I am going to share my screen, and you can let me know when you want to advance.
Thank you, Zoe. Hi, everyone.
It's coming. Can you see my screen yet?
No.
No. Okay. There. Are we good?
Thanks, Zoe. Thanks for having us here today. I'm going to walk you all through, as Zoe just described, the main findings and areas of inquiry. I know it's going to catch up, Zoe. It will.
I think it will. You know this like the back of your hand, so I'm going to just reshare again while you're starting.
This report was submitted to legislature on September 26th, and I often get nervous when presenting. That manifests in me talking a bit fast. So if that happens, that's what's going on, but I'm going to pace myself today. So this report, it required a lot of specialized expertise from across our organization. And so we'll do a high level, and then I can provide additional information from the programmatic side. And I know it's going to catch up with Zoe, and then we'll start at slide 2.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes, but then we'll pause for questions.
Is the slide you want to start on, Cassie?
No, you can go to, yeah, right there, perfect. So just a little background before we dig in. This report was written as part of Section 29 of Act 73. And this first slide is just highlighting the goals of this report. So there were 5 goals, and there were several deliverables that were requested as part of the report to get at these identified goals. So we're going to look at some of those data points, but firstly, review of the goals is to improve special education delivery and manage rising costs, ensuring inclusive services in the least restrictive environment in a way that makes efficient and effective use of limited resources while resulting in the best outcomes, responding to the challenges of fully implementing Act 173 and the lessons learned from implementation efforts to date, ensuring that the delivery of special education is responsive to student needs, and addressing drivers of growth of extraordinary expenditures in special education. And we'll go to the next slide. So during the production of this report, we met with the Special Education Policy Sprint team 7 times. These meetings were truly crucial for our process. It included folks from a variety of roles within the field. And this group supported our team in the importance of naming data gaps, specifically when considering effective implementation of instructional practices, the quality of Tier 1 instruction, and access to multi-tiered systems of support. We have gaps. Those gaps prevent us from responding to some of the goals identified. For example, responding to the challenges of fully implementing Act 173, and we'll talk about that in a moment as one of our findings. So there are data gaps, and we really tried to identify those within this reporting. Additional themes that were raised included variability in district capacity to meet the needs of students with IEPs. Continuums of educational environments, they vary across our state, and we know that there is variability. That is to be expected. But we also know that within that variability, there is limited access to highly skilled professionals, teacher preparation gaps, and then just a genuine need for more program evaluation and monitoring protocols to assess quality and cost of education delivery across the entire system. So the charge really, guys, it's beyond the scope of special education. The need for improvement is present and necessary across our entire system. The Sprint team also stressed the importance of clear communication to the legislature. We're talking about cost, that has implications. And when we think about the cost of special education in its current state, it's as expensive as it needs to be in order to make our current educational system accessible in Vermont. So special education, it's about addressing progress in the general education curriculum for students with disabilities through services, goals, supports, right? That ultimately makes up an IEP, where we're providing specially designed instruction. So it means that the student needs specially designed instruction beyond the scope of what general education can offer in order to access and make progress. So we have to be mindful in the ways in which we understand this data, because students on IEPs, they have individualized programming, again, based on how they access and make progress. So we just can't look to special education as the reason for rising costs. We're talking about systems. We're recognizing that special education, it's presumptive on quality first instruction, and to improve outcomes for all students, which is a need in our state, we have to prioritize and support academic progression for all students. So again, it includes understanding what's happening at that layer of education in our state that most students interact with. So that's the environment that we're talking about. And when we say, improving the quality of Tier 1 instruction is essential to realizing the full benefits of inclusion, which is that last part of this slide, we're saying that if that environment is not meeting the needs of most students, all students are going to have a hard time accessing it, and students with disabilities are going to be identified as needing specially designed instruction in order to access their general education environment, which then results in an increase in students being identified as needing special education services. So there are several main findings highlighted. Oops, sorry, Zoe, next slide. There are several main findings highlighted within this report. Firstly, increased student need. Overall enrollment has declined, but the number of students with IEPs has increased. Additionally, we have a growth in students qualifying for extraordinary expenses, and so that indicates both a greater intensity and complexity of needs. So this information, coupled with those rising extraordinary costs, particularly in tuition and transportation, again, it reflects that increasing severity of student need, and then this unknown variability of in-house capacity, staffing, and specialized resources. So extraordinary costs have driven nearly half of the growth in special education spending over 6 years, while only being 15% of the expenditures. So despite driving 50% of the growth, the extraordinary costs make up only 15% of the total amount currently being spent on special education. And when you take it to an even more granular level, that growth is concentrated in tuition and transportation costs. As of school year 2024, there were 16,152 students with IEPs ages 3 to 21 in Vermont. There's an ongoing trend of increasing total numbers of students with disabilities on IEPs ages 3 to 21, and then also increasing total extraordinary costs, even as overall student enrollment has declined. So the red line here is showing the percentage of students on IEPs out of the total number of students enrolled, while the blue line is showing that total pre-K to 12 enrollment. So you'll notice as total enrollment is going down, the total percentage increase of students with IEPs in Vermont between that time period, so school year 2020 to school year 2024, it grows from 17.9% to 19.6%, which is what you're seeing on this graph. Oop, next slide. Oh, you got it. Yes. This breaks it all down a little further. In school year 2025, there were 16,354 students in total with IEPs spanning ages 3 to 21 in Vermont, 1,460 of whom were ages 3, 4, and 5-year-olds not in kindergarten. So this graph is showing the total number of students on IEPs in Vermont from school year 2019 to school year 2025. So this data is showing that for most of the period on this graph here, the number of students with an IEP hovered consistently around 15,500, with the count rising to approximately 16,000 students in school year 2024. The dotted line on the graph represents a change in the measurement methodology. So before school year 2021, data for students on IEPs was divided into 2 age groups. That's 3 to 5 and 6 to 21. And so beginning in school year 2021, that measurement was adjusted to be 3 to 5-year-olds not in kindergarten so that we could get a more genuine pre-K measure, and then 5-year-olds in kindergarten through age 21. So that change in methodology is partly explaining the visual shift in the line at that point. After school year 2021, the way the data that it was collected remains consistent, so you can sort of see a clearer view of this trend. The data is showing a steady growth in the number of students with IEPs and the recent increase in the total student count. It's not a general trend across all age groups, but it's rather driven by a steady rise in the number of school-age students requiring an IEP. So the data shows that the number of preschool-age students, it's remained stable, while the number of students ages 6 to 21 has steadily increased. And when considering grade level percentages of students with an IEP, we didn't include this in the report, but when you're looking at the percentage of students in a grade on an IEP, for students K to 12, that number ranges from 16 to 22% on average. Again, just kind of showcasing that the rate of students with IEPs is persisting across grades for school-age students. While not shown on this graph, specific learning disability, or SLD, remains the most common disability category, and the count in this category has been relatively stable. I want you to imagine that there's also a trend line here for school year 2023. After that year, so school year 2024, that's the first year that all of the special education rule changes were in effect. There was a slight spike in the identification of SLD as the primary disability category, followed by a 4% decline in the most recent year of data, which is school year 2025. The shift away from the discrepancy model and towards a new model based on a student's response to scientific research-based interventions. This was intended to allow for earlier intervention, and it might also lead to a decrease in the number of students identified with SLD in the coming years. And again, the success of this new model, it really hinges on the quality of the entire system. It was reliant on effective implementation of Act 173, which again involves improving things like universal instruction, the fidelity of targeted interventions, and many more still relevant and important shifts to the system that districts in our state are working to implement. The chart, next slide, please. The chart on, sorry, I went too far there, go back one. Thanks, Zoe. The chart that's showing up on the left for me here, the one with a bunch of lines, is specifically isolating the data for 3 of the most prevalent primary disability categories for students on IEPs. So SLD has the highest percentage in our state and nationally, followed by other health impairment, emotional disturbance, and autism. Autism shows a continuous increase and has grown in prevalence by 33% between school year 2019 and school year 2025. Other health impairment has also shown a continuous increase and has grown in prevalence by 26% between school year 2019 and school year 2025. And then emotional disturbance, it's remained relatively stable, but it's a key driver due to its higher than average prevalence in Vermont. So other health impairment, or OHI, it's a special education disability category for students who have chronic or acute health problems that limit their strength, vitality, or alertness, and adversely affects their educational performance. And then emotional disturbance, or ED as defined, it can differ significantly between states, which is a key factor in any of these comparisons. But for school year 2023, 15% of students on IEPs in Vermont had a primary disability category of ED, compared to the national average of 4.5%, and that's what's shown in the table on this slide. There are several potential reasons for the high number of students with ED in Vermont, but it should be considered an area of future inquiry. One contributing factor could be the state's comprehensive and proactive approach to mental health and special education. Vermont's policies might be more inclined to identify and support students with emotional and behavioral challenges earlier than other states, potentially leading to a higher classification rate. We had the COVID-19 pandemic, which had state and national impacts on the mental health of students. But again, keeping in mind, special education is defined, it's the need for specially designed instruction to access the general education curriculum. So being identified as having an emotional disturbance does not equal special education. But students identified with an emotional disturbance in our state are needing special education services more often to access and make progress in the general education curriculum at a much higher rate than students nationally. Next slide. This graph is related to what I was describing in the opening here, where there's been, I'm losing my train of thought on this one, where there's been a 15% increase, but the extraordinary expenditures, I'm sorry, I don't have it in my notes here, but it's showing that over these 4 fiscal years for various special education related financial categories or programs, that the extraordinary reimbursement column, that's where you're seeing much of the increases in cost. So they're concentrated in that area. Next slide. This next table is summarizing special education financial trends from fiscal year 2018 through fiscal year 2024. Overall, we've seen significant growth. Our total special education expenses increased from approximately $397 million in fiscal year 2018 to over $473 million by fiscal year 2024. However, that growth hasn't been linear. You'll notice there's a dip in fiscal year 2021 where expenses actually saw a negative 5.3% growth. And then following that dip, we saw a rebound in the subsequent years, culminating in the highest annual growth rate in the period, 8.5% in fiscal year 2024. And when considering extraordinary expenses, those grew from about $53 million to over $86 million between the time period shown here. And the annual growth in this category is particularly notable. We've seen double-digit growth in most years, with the highest spike occurring in fiscal year 2023 at a 25.6% annual increase. Next slide. This last graph is showing growth in extraordinary costs by disability codes, and this illustrates the distribution of extraordinary special education costs. I think I had a slide hidden in here, and it might have just skipped it. I'll go back to it at the end, guys, if we have to. This illustrates the distribution of extraordinary special education costs in Vermont across different disability categories from fiscal year 2015 to 2025. It reveals that the rising overall costs are not spread evenly, but are instead heavily concentrated in a few specific categories. So this graph is highlighting the following key trends. Autism and emotional disturbance are the primary disability categories that contribute to extraordinary special education costs. The cost associated with these two categories has grown significantly since 2015. It dominates the total extraordinary expenditure category. And the categories of multiple disability and other health impairment also show a notable increase in costs over this period. So again, it could suggest a growing combination of complex needs that requires high-cost specialized service. In contrast, costs for other major disability categories, such as specific learning disability and speech-language impairment, they've remained relatively low and stable. And it just reinforces that the financial pressure on the special education system, it's not due, I tried to look at you guys and then I lost my spot, sorry. This reinforces that the financial pressure on the special education system, it's not due to a general increase in the number of students with disabilities, but rather a targeted growth for students requiring more intensive special education services. So when both graphs are combined, we begin to have some insight here. The overall growth in extraordinary costs, as seen in that earlier graph, that growth is perhaps influenced by an increase in intensive special education cases for students with autism, emotional disturbance, and multiple disabilities. And then also perhaps a challenge in our current system's ability to meet the needs of students locally. This trend is also directly connected to Vermont's special education funding system. The state provides an excess cost grant to reimburse districts for the extraordinary costs of students with high needs. In general, this data suggests that this funding mechanism is being used more frequently and for a growing number of students in these specific disability categories. Next slide. We're going to move into another main finding, which is that we have gaps in service delivery. And this is notable when considering data around educational environments. Vermont serves students in either highly inclusive classrooms, so it's that 80% or more when we're thinking about educational environments, or in separate schools, which is shown as a separate line item, which you'll see when looking at this data in a moment. So in the report, this pattern is broken down by disability categories, and there's just still a lot of work that we need to do here to really understand the complexities of this finding, but there are patterns. It could be creating cost implications and highlighting service delivery gaps. And it showcases continued challenges with general and special education practices, the alignment of those practices, a heavy reliance on paraeducators to access general education, and just in general, limited shared ownership of outcomes for students with IEPs. Next slide. So if you look on the left side of this table, this is what I mean when I say educational environments. We tend to think about the first setting, which is served inside the regular class 80% or more of the day. We tend to think of that as the least restrictive environment. That's where most students are. That's the most inclusive setting. And as you go down the list of potential settings, they get more restrictive. So 40 to 79% of the day, less than 40% of the day, separate schools, residential facilities. Not reported here are students in correctional facilities and hospital or homebound placements. So as you begin to look at the data, you'll notice that a large percentage of our students are served in the least restrictive setting. There's always been a focus on inclusion in Vermont, and in most cases, students on IEPs are served in the regular setting. That 80% represents approximately 12,000 students. And I just want to note here again that inclusion, having a seat in the classroom, it's not an indicator of belonging or access. We have a rising number of students on IEPs, which indicates that students are requiring special education or specially designed instruction in order to be in that least restrictive environment. So that's an important factor to keep in mind when thinking about inclusion, accessibility, and ultimately student belonging. So as we go down the potential types of settings, the time spent in general education classrooms reduces, and over the years, these partially inclusive settings, which are kind of more in the middle of this table, they've been decreasing, and the frequency of students served in separate settings has increased. And when we think about actual numbers, we're talking about approximately 1,500 students in these more partially inclusive settings, and about 800 students when considering separate settings. And then residential facilities have been relatively stable and not a setting that we're gonna revisit. So now we're looking at educational environments by comparable states. The most recent national data for comparison is school year 2023. And for that year, Vermont had the third highest percentage in the nation of students being served in separate schools. In regards to comparing Vermont's educational environments to other states, we selected states with similar population sizes, so North Dakota and Wyoming. Again, when compared to other states, we surpass other states with our average for the percent of students included in regular class 80% or more of the day. And as you go down the line, you'll notice a similar trend. So 40 to 79% of the day, our numbers are low compared to other states and nationally. And when you go down to separate schools, we have a higher percentage of students in separate schools at 5.27%, which is more than double the national average. And again, it just shows us that compared to other states, students are less likely to have their educational placement land in that 40 to 79% or less than 40% range in Vermont. And they're more likely to either be in the 80% or more environment or served in a separate specialized school setting. Next slide. So now we're breaking this data down a little bit more, and we're looking at it specifically for the disability category of autism. And those percentages are representing the number of total students with a primary disability category of autism. Again, leading the table at 63% for including students with autism in regular classrooms for 80% or more of the day. So that comparison indicates that students are placed in less restrictive settings at a higher frequency than other states for this particular disability category. Conversely, Vermont has a notably lower percentage of students with autism served inside a regular class, 40 through 79% of the day, at 15%. And as you move down to separate schools, again, a much higher percentage of students with autism placed in separate schools at 9%, quite a bit higher than our peer states, and surpassing the national average of 5.81%. Again, it just suggests that when full inclusion, so 80% or more in regular classes, if that isn't the chosen path for a student with autism in Vermont, the alternative might be a separate school setting rather than a less restrictive option like a regular class for less than 40% of the day. We can't exactly say why this is, but some questions that come to mind with this data, are there sufficient resources and specialized support models within local schools to allow for partial inclusion for students with autism who may need more intensive but still integrated services? What factors contribute to the higher reliance on separate schools for students with autism in Vermont? Is it a lack of specialized staff or programs within local public schools? Are there specific types of needs that maybe are consistently being met in separate school settings that aren't being addressed locally? And then what are the long-term outcomes for students with autism in Vermont's various placement settings? Are students transitioning successfully, back to more inclusive environments? Are they reintegrating into post-secondary opportunities? Understanding these dynamics, it's crucial for ensuring that all students in Vermont receive services in the least restrictive environment appropriate for their individual needs, and that a full continuum of support is available. Next slide. So this table is showing educational environments for students with a disability category of emotional disturbance. And just before we dig in, I'm going to note again, this disability category is defined differently state to state. It has different eligibility criteria. The comparison's not linear, and most of these comparisons are not linear because there are many variables that might cause variation across states. The table shows a distinct pattern for students identified with emotional disturbance, with Vermont's data again standing out from its peers and the national average. So similar to the chart for disability categories of autism, we have a high percentage of students with ED in regular classrooms for 80% or more of the day, coming in at 62%, higher than the national average, but less than our peer states. And as you move down the table, we have a low percentage of students in those more partially inclusive settings, coming in at 5% for 40 through 79% of the day and 7% for 40% or less. Both of those figures are below the national average and below our peer states. And again, it just indicates that these intermediate placements, they're not used as frequently for students with ED in Vermont. The most significant finding here is Vermont's high rate of placing students with ED in separate schools at almost 20%. This figure is nearly double the national average, and it's drastically higher than Wyoming and North Dakota. The data for students with emotional disturbance, it just sort of reinforces this all or nothing kind of pattern that we're talking about. We place a high proportion of students in fully inclusive settings, 80% or more, compared to the national average, but students who are not placed in that setting, our educational system appears to favor separate school placements, almost to the exclusion of other options within local public schools. It just suggests that there's a lack of a continuum of in-district support services that could serve as alternatives to separate schools. Again, it could be due to a variety of factors, severity of students' needs, a lack of specialized resources and staffing in local schools, or perhaps a systemic preference for separate school environments for particular populations. The complexities that were just outlined should be evaluated with caution. We've identified that while many districts have organized specialized settings and intentional clusters of services to provide supports for students, we don't currently collect data in such a way that we can evaluate with confidence the quality or structure of these services. So it's an area for future inquiry. It should include qualitative analysis as well as comparative quantitative analysis of student outcomes in a variety of service models. Next slide. Another main finding is something I've alluded to. We have to recognize the role of high quality instruction. Declining performance is present for all types of learners, plus persistent IEP achievement gaps. And it speaks to a need for stronger implementation of best practices in first instruction, evaluation and implementation of Act 173, and just accessibility of learning environments for all students. We just shared this one, but we have higher rates of separate placements, and perhaps that continuum of supports is missing in many schools and districts, and we need to support schools in both building less restrictive classrooms and placements that are aligned with individual need. Next slide. This report and the subsequent special education strategic plan, it calls for an evaluation of Act 173. It's a critical task, but Act 173, it wasn't special education legislation, and so that's the foundation that we kind of want to frame here. But we also believe Act 173 was the right legislation, and it tackles many of the issues that we're talking about now. However, the accountability methods at the Agency of Education that are currently in place, they just don't really offer visibility into the implementation of Act 173. We don't know the ways in which evidence-based practices are being implemented, the consistency of access to intervention supports, and then how clusters of services are functioning across schools and districts. And again, bigger than us, bigger than just IEPs and students accessing special education, Act 173 was about all students who struggle. So we have to understand how schools are approaching their MTSS designs and how that impacts service delivery for all types of plans, so 504s, ESTs, all types of plans that could be employed for a student who struggles. So those are crucial next steps and areas of inquiry in this process. Next slide. And then lastly, there are cost containment considerations. I was not planning on getting into the intricacies of MFS and MOE, but just so everyone has a foundation of some of this, these are dual accountability methods that protect funding for students with disabilities, and it's something the legislature has to consider when making decisions about funding. There's state level maintenance of fiscal support, or MFS, and then the local level maintenance of effort, or MOE. And these provisions require that we maintain funds for special education spending. So it's a dual accountability that protects funding for students under IDEA. Next slide. Just a couple more, guys. Ultimately, there's understanding at the agency level that we have capacity building considerations. The AOE reorganization was designed to align general and special education, strengthen oversight, and support the field, and that reorganization is in the stages of manifesting currently. The actions have included establishing new positions and aligning teams, reestablishing a regular monitoring cycle, implementing differentiated accountability, expanding technical assistance and training, and then addressing independent school approval backlogs now under new state board rules. Act 73, ultimately, it aims to create scale, address service gaps, workforce challenges, and deliver equality. Next slide. There is future planning in the works. There is strategic planning that is focused on implementing and building state and district capacity to deliver best practices with fidelity. The agency will be commissioning a secondary report to really evaluate conditions for adopting weighted funding models under Act 73 and assessing advantages and drawbacks. And then there is future parallel work going on with national experts to develop a blueprint for implementing proven best practices, system-wide monitoring tools, and capacity building training at state and district levels, regardless of funding changes. Next slide. So yeah, there's a lot going on. The AOE and the Special Education Division, we have a lot of work coming up. And alongside all of this, we are tasked with developing our strategic plan. So this slide is just showing the legislative language for our charge. We will develop a strategic plan for the delivery of special education services in Vermont, unambiguous measurable outcomes, and a timeline for implementation, and informed by the analysis and findings of this report. And we are also informing this by unmet needs documentation that was submitted by the Special Education Advisory Panel. There's an additional clause that has come up consistently, which is that this strategic plan will be designed to ensure successful implementation of Act 173. And Zoe, feel free to interrupt me at any point, but we're called to ensure successful implementation of Act 173 and provide the supports and processes that need to be in place for the transition to a weighted funding model for special education to succeed. So we understand what the legislature is asking for here, but I want to name for you all that all of that might not necessarily be in the special education strategic plan. As I just signaled, and Erin and Zoe might speak more to this, there is a bigger strategic plan coming in the format of a blueprint, an agency-level strategic plan, which will be developed in parallel work. There's a second forthcoming special education report that will offer recommendations and considerations. So these are all up and coming work that will inform us further. Our current approach to the strategic planning process has involved the Special Education Division in collaboration with the Special Education Advisory Panel and soon the Steering Committee. We're identifying objectives to guide broader initiatives. And like I said, the unaddressed findings will be tackled as a core pillar in the AOE's overarching strategic plan. So for now, I'm just going to redirect us to the first part of this charge and share with you our timeline and the early stages of this work. So we met with the Special Education Advisory Panel on October 7th. It was an incredible meeting. We established consensus on goals, and I'll get to those in a moment. We have our next meeting on October 21st, in which we will share a draft of objectives with the Executive Committee, and then we'll share those draft objectives with the full panel on our November 4th meeting. On November 18th, we'll be sharing example activities for the strategic plan to the Executive Committee and then with the full panel for our December 2nd meeting. You might recall that the report is due December 1. We've requested an extension to December 10th, so this is like a dreamy slide. I'm hoping that that is granted. With the support of the panel and the board chair, Katie Ballard, we all agreed that we need an additional week to deliver this report. We have a meeting already scheduled on the 2nd, and we want to ensure that we're able to do this right. So we have a dedicated group of folks, however, who are ready to warn another meeting if we find out that we don't have an extension. So there is a backup plan. Next slide. We're also engaging with the steering committee, which is formerly the Sprint team, who I described at the start of this call. They helped with the initial drafting of this report, and the Vermont Council for Special Education Administrators, or VSBE. So this is a timeline of those meetings. The steering, again, I already said that, they're the former Sprint team, so a continuation of the group. In total, we were able to fit in 13 opportunities to consult with 3 different groups on the strategic plan, and the energy has been really exciting. It's exciting work. We have eager folks who I've been on this team for 3.5 years. We've been talking about this for a long time, so we're eager and excited to keep this work moving. So I'm going to move into the goals next, and then just share a very draft idea of where we're headed. So really productive meeting, and we've been closely engaged with the Special Education Advisory Panel over the past year. So in many ways, this report, the goals you see on this slide, it's coming from months of consultation. We came to the meeting on October 7th with 2 goal areas identified. So the AOE brought 2 goal areas, which was enhance special education service delivery and improve quality, which you'll see here as goal 2, and then goal 4, foster family collaboration, and ensure system accessibility, which you'll see as goal 4. So after some discussion, we landed on the 5 goals that you see on this screen. These will be in the strategic plan with objectives and example activities that are born out of those goals. I'm going to share a brief example in a moment. But goal 1, establishing standardized special education policies, practices, and procedures. It's about consistent approaches, consistency with child find, evaluation methods, disability identification, and the guidance and resources and technical assistance that the agency needs to build in order to address the inconsistencies. Goal 2 is centered around enhancing special education service delivery and improving quality. So again, it's about how we deliver, where we deliver, what does instruction look like, all instruction, how do we monitor progress, staffing shortages, retention rates, educator prep programs. This goal is centered around all the ways we can be out in the field, guiding and supporting folks to enhance delivery and improve overall quality. Goal 3 is about ensuring accountability and strengthening oversight for special education. There's a great need in our state to understand the context and build accountability frameworks. On the special education division, we have a robust general supervision system, but we lack a statewide IEP system and other areas of data that we really need to tighten up, suspensions and expulsions, restraints and seclusions. There's areas in which we need to know more so that we can strengthen our accountability and oversight. And then goal 4, fostering family collaboration and ensuring system accessibility. We'll look at an example for this one in a moment, but this is about resources, parent-friendly copies of rights, multilingual learners. How are we making sure our system is accessible, and what do we do across our agency to make sure families have what they need? And then lastly, goal 5, deepen the agency of education's integration and collaboration with special education. As a former special education teacher, I'm familiar with the separation of special education and general education in practice, and that historically has been the model at the agency. But Zoe has worked diligently to change that for our team, to change the dynamics of how we work, and I know that the special education panel and my division sees that work. We appreciate it, and we collectively see it as valuable, and it needs to be a goal in our strategic plan and a component that we have to keep making progress on as we continue this work. And then the final slide. Just kind of sharing with you all this goal, which was derived from the Special Education Advisory Panel on their unmet needs recommendations. It highlighted significant issues in parent-school collaboration, so it led to this being one of our strategic planning goals. The goal seeks to address these deficiencies with some of these key objectives, really focusing on how do we increase family engagement and collaboration through the provision of resources. So how do we encourage special education parent advisory councils or CPACs across our state and the dissemination of parent-friendly rights information in accessible formats? How do we include improving equitable access for multilingual learners? So this goal and some of these draft objectives is just a preview of where we're headed with this work. It's a working, quickly changing document, to be honest. Like, this one has already changed, but I made this last week and I didn't want to change it. So it's a moving target. And I realize I just said a lot, so thank you for the time, and I will stop talking now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add or questions, comments?
I thought you did very well. You got through it. Very well performed.
It was comprehensive.
I do have a question.
Yes.
When you're ready.
Lyle?
Is there, and maybe you said it and I missed it because there was a lot, is there a nexus between your work and the redistricting work that's going on right now? Because it seems like there's some need to make sure both of those happen in parallel. And how might that help staffing patterns, delivery that would be consistent? I'm hearing you say that it's different, and it's different everywhere. Mm-hmm. And you're trying to you wrap your arms around that. And would the redistricting task force be helpful in that process?
I'll turn this over to Zoe after I give my initial thoughts, but I would say yes, and we have really a need to better understand all of the things that you just named, which is part of what our strategic planning work is drafting out right now. What do we do? Where are there gaps? How do we get at that data? Some of it's going to be going out into the field. Some of it might be surveying. There's going to be a variety of ways that we actually have to get a baseline of what's going on. And then, yes, I think the nexus is with that redistricting task force to be thinking about how we build local continuums of support, how we get at the quality of Tier 1 instruction, and anything you want to add, Zoe?
This was an exact question from the Special Education Advisory Panel. They want to make sure that through the education transformation process, there's intentional thought around how we are strengthening special education delivery and supporting the needs of all students with an IEP. And so when I responded to that question at their last meeting, I reminded them there's a lot of moving parts to this work. And so Act 73 is creating changes to how we govern and fund schools along with measure of quality. And so these are all puzzle pieces that need to fit together. The redistricting task force is an important part of that, which is charged with thinking about how to actually create those district lines that are going to ensure resources can be properly distributed and meet the needs of students. On that particular topic of redistricting, I see their role really contemplating considerations around scale. And in this report, as Cassie highlighted, we have had some conversations and focus groups across the state of Vermont and really evaluating districts' ability to deliver specialized services and clusters of support for their students. And we found that there are some barriers of scale. So our larger districts are able to better create these continuums.
The following students, please come to the high school main office at the Bell. Bella Walsh, Chloe Hebler, Quinn Murphy, Chloe Marsden, Maddie Hayes, Megan Wetmore, Elena Allard, Olivia Hutchins, Morgan Oakman, and Hannah Allard. Thank you.
I always wait for my name to come up. You know, it's just like, as a student, you're conditioned. Is my name coming up? It didn't, so I'm going to stay. So just with redistricting, there are important considerations around scale, and we're working very closely to provide input around the mapping tool that they're using as a resource to them. And some of the layers that we've provided for that mapping tool do take into consideration where our therapeutic schools are located. Also, we're looking at drive time, so we can think about some transportation needs. So that part of the work is contemplating some of this. Then the Commission on the Future of Public Education is charged with thinking about the different roles and responsibilities at the state and the district level. That's also important as we're developing this blueprint to think about accountability and what monitoring tools and support need to be in place in the entire system. And then as it relates to funding, we were asked within this report to make some recommendations around the conditions that need to be in place to move to a different funding model for special education. So within Act 73, there's the movement to the foundation funding formula, but there's also the intention of moving away from our current census block funding for special education and moving to a weighted tiered funding model. We have, as Cassie mentioned, commissioned a secondary report to look into that, to provide a further review around what needs to be built within our system to achieve that transition in a way that would meet the goals explicitly outlined within Act 73 of better resourcing our system and meeting the needs of students. We also want to contemplate what are the pros and cons of that approach and what have other states learned as they've made those shifts. So we've noted within the report some of the specific questions we have that will be available to the legislature in the February timeframe to inform further conversations. So when we think about special education in relation to education transformation, it really cuts across those major policy levers, looking at governance, funding, and quality all being connected. And so the redistricting, to answer your first question, is a part of that. And we're working to make those connections. But there's also other really important connection points that we need to consider as we're thinking about the delivery of quality, roles and responsibilities, and how to fund the system. And our effort at the agency is to really create that through line and help to make those connections. Because one change in the part of our system impacts everything else. So a change in governance impacts funding, impacts quality, and those are things we're really looking at holistically within the recommendations we put forward for the various committees that are charged with this important work.
Thank you.
Sarah?
Yes, you're
You noted that the emotional disturbance definition is different state by state. In Vermont, who creates that definition? Is that a medically based definition? Is it one that the agency establishes, or how is that definition
Yeah, so the baseline definition is coming from IDEA, and then state board rules, and I believe our special education rules are governed by the board.
Yep.
That we have our own, like, additional sort of, so other states might call it something different. You have your baseline qualifications coming from IDEA, and then we have some other things above and beyond within our rules.
Thank you. I thought that was the answer. I just wanted to flag that because a lot of our work together in the next 2 years will be evaluating the rules. And
Yes.
if there's any further conversation that needs to be had about that, I'm sure the board would want to entertain that conversation.
And Sarah, we have a document I can share with you too that we do every year, which is what within our rules goes above and beyond IDEA. So we've already published that for this
Great,
year.
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
So I'm intrigued by the higher than national average number of students with autism and emotional disturbance who are, in a classroom 80% of the time, and then how it drops so precipitously. And I'm sure you guys have spent a lot of time thinking about, why. And my first question is, do you see, are they more likely to be in the classroom as they're younger, and then as they get older, that stops? Or is it just 80%, regardless of whether we're talking about, it's everything altogether?
So we have not distilled it down to grade yet, which is something I believe our data team is working on.
Okay.
Is distilling educational environments down by grade, and then maybe even another step further by disability category by grade, because then we might really be able to see some trends. And I think also an area of inquiry that we really have is, what is that reintegration process like our students being reintegrated back into their local schools? And that was a question from the legislature that we just don't really currently have the data metrics to capture of if that reintegration is happening. So it's just a lot of unknowns within that data set.
Yeah, and once we start putting them in separate schools, that's really where our expenses go up a lot. And so I'm curious, as you look at this trend of, 80%, and then it seems like somehow we're lacking support for the kids in that middle band. And,
Exactly.
to your point, it's either all or nothing, more or less. What are the next steps? What are you thinking in terms of what you need to be looking for data-wise, or in terms of what you want to do to reshape the system?
So there's a couple steps that we've been thinking about. The first one being understanding the data here, and that's going to involve us getting out in the field, working closely with our data team, because there's some complexities that I can name here that, not to get too into the weeds, but let's say, for example, you have an in-house alternative program where some students might be interacting 40% or less. Are we certain that all schools are coding that correctly and that we're capturing that data correctly? So there's some work needed there to understand that component. Then there's this greater work needed to really bolster Tier 1 instruction and ensure that those environments are really making progress, allowing progress for all students. And then I think we can take it to another layer of, I'm pretty passionate about working with students who have maybe more complex special education needs. There's a need to get out in the field and do some training on how do you include students with more significant needs? How do you build programming? What does that look like? I think even some of the examples that were shared here at this district today are examples of what we're talking about. And that, I think, is going to be more intensive work, where we need to be out in the field. We need to be visiting programs, understanding the needs, so that we can really generate solutions. Because I think, Jennifer, I'm giving you some ideas, like we need more training, but we don't really know the depth or breadth of all of this quite yet.
And Cassie, can you expand a little bit? I know we've talked a lot about how we have more students in a separate setting compared to other states. We also have a real focus on inclusion, but can you talk about kind of the supports that need to be in place for inclusion to really meet the needs of students in the classroom?
Yeah, when I'm thinking about the data about this topic, we're special education, I have to go back to it being presumptive on good first instruction. And so that brings us to this notion that we have declining enrollment, but we have an increased percentage of student need within that Tier 1 instruction. I'm sorry, Zoe, I already lost sight of your question, so just stop me if you need to recenter me here. But that, again, is just...
You've said it a couple times just in our planning meetings, right? The inclusion itself is not enough. Making sure that classroom design is in place to meet the needs of students. So you can expand upon that, because there's also, there's programmatic considerations. And there's also cost considerations as well as we're thinking about.
So it's considering, how do we work with universally designed instruction? How do we make sure that there's a continuous curriculum? Again, I think that's something happening across our state is there's curriculum development and students maybe not accessing some of that development as they're going. How do we get into those systems? We don't know what all the curriculum that is being offered in. So how do we kind of get in there and showcase how you might modify and accommodate, how you build an educational environment that is accessible for all learners. I have been on the special education team for 3.5 years, and I think pre-COVID, there maybe was more interaction with the field, but post-COVID, we haven't been out in the field much. We just don't have a grip on this topic, and so I think it's twofold. There's bolstering Tier 1 instruction for all students, but that's also involving universally designed environments and instruction, and having special education team members go in and really work with general educators, with leaders on how to design inclusive schedules, right? It gets down to all layers of the system that we really need to work on. And then the other thing is, we're not going to change educational environments for students. That's not what this is about. These are individualized programs. Those settings are decided by IEP teams. But the idea would be that if we're bolstering first instruction and creating more accessible environments, we're naturally going to see some of those placements change because we will have a better continuum.
We saw an example of that today in our tour at the Annex program. I think there was some small classrooms that were specifically designed, and I think we learned that they weren't necessarily students who were on IEPs, but they were for students who had a particular need for a type of classroom and a type of learning. And there were, seemed to be, for our 3-minute, popping our head in, it seemed to be a really integrated setting with students of a variety of abilities. But that was a really interesting thing, I think, to see today in light of the board's work with class size minimums and the special education overlay.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that Act 173 was about creating accessibility for any learner who struggles, and that's what we're talking about here too, is that you can be a student with a disability and not necessarily be on an IEP. The IEP is indicating that you're not accessing the general education environment and that you need specially designed instruction to access. So those numbers rising up is telling us more about that instructional environment that all students are interacting with.
And you can see a common theme. We're really looking at this work holistically. And as we move forward with our planning, what Cassie has walked through is really specific around how we're going to strengthen, our special education delivery. And the planning is really a division level plan, right? It's really thinking about how our special education team at the Agency of Education can really move forward tactically in really improving the delivery and supporting the field with serving our students with an IEP. However, that work is going to be nested within our broader plan under the pillars of academic excellence, and also special education and differentiating support for all learners. And so there's a steering committee that's being formed to really look comprehensively across. And so we're going to be very intentional about identifying those points of intersection so that we are not creating silos, but we're really strengthening the entire system of support. And so this work is the hard work. It is the right work. And I think that's what we heard really clearly in working with educators in developing this report and thinking about future planning, is that we need to be intentional about thinking around the whole system. And so what we are going to have support on is this blueprint of really thinking about how do we implement these best practices around multi-tiered systems of support, quality tier instruction for all learners in a way that Act 173 was designed to do. We need different monitoring tools in place. We need different data collection procedures in place. We need different on-the-ground support. And so we're really looking forward and eager to building that implementation plan and evaluating how we can sustain that work. We've seen this happen in other states. So we've seen other states pretty much take Act 173 or their own version of that and implement it, such as Louisiana has had really great gains in terms of overall academic proficiency for all learners and for students with an IEP. And so what we need to focus on in Vermont, we've identified what works. And I think we really have consensus across educators that we know that it's evidence-based. It continues to be the right work to focus on. And now our efforts are around implementation. So we're very, very much focused on implementing and supporting the field in these best practices and supporting students.
So I want to turn to our board members who are online, and Caleb, I do see that you have your hand raised. Tom, Cynthia, and Mohammed, I don't know if you have any questions, but I'll start with Caleb.
Yeah, so first off, just as a quick comment, I'm circling back to the discussion about like the IEP numbers and like that whole section. So you said something like, it's a range of like 16 to 22% depending on the grade level. Once you like change that scale of analysis, instead of going 3 to 5 and 6 to 21 to going toward the grade levels. And I would just be weary throwing around 6% like that. Not because it's such a wide range, but just because of the data set you're looking at. 6%, of course, doesn't
it's 16%,
seem like a lot, but I
Caleb.
think when you're referring to students, that's a pretty huge number. So I mean,
Sorry.
I've heard, like this is completely.
Sorry,
personal
just a
observation.
correction. It's 16%, Caleb. The range is 16% to 22%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, did it not come through correctly?
I heard 6, so I just wanted to correct that, the percentage for
Sorry,
grade
I was
levels.
saying- I was saying the difference between the two is 6%.
Oh, it's 6%, I see, yep.
So that really is a large number of students. So just in terms of personal observation, like that might just be me, but that is a huge number of students to be throwing around. But either way, like that's not the main point I'm trying to make here. The question I was gonna ask is, when you go down changing that scale of analysis to grade level, is there any specific like trends or spikes or anomalies in the data? Like, is it specifically like high schoolers or middle schoolers, like 7th and 8th? Or is it like early childhood education, like K through 3, where there's like a significant increase or decrease in the number of IEPs?
So we found there was nothing super significant within those ranges that we could pull out, but there's a future data request, Caleb, where we want to look at this now by grade level, by disability category, because all we were looking at was the percentage of students on IEPs per grade level. So K to 12, what percentage of that total number of students is on an IEP within each grade level? And that is the only way so far that I've seen the data broken down. We have a data division that provides a lot of this data to us, and as we're commissioning future reports, we're looking at different layers of this exact topic. Because to your point, it is still a large number of students, and we don't have it broken down quite enough to be able to identify those trends.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Maybe just a comment. The data is wonderful, and I think everyone's working really hard in all the school settings that they're in. And as you're talking about the data, and we're looking at autism and emotional disturbance, I'm thinking about small elementary schools and how hard it must be to be a special educator and have the breadth of skills that you are going to have to deal with all those different silos of need. It doesn't surprise me one bit that there are more students in special schools, because those elementary schools are probably working very hard to find the right setting and the right delivery that they, as an individual special educator, might not be able to provide. So I'm going to circle back to the redistricting thing and the capacity and how potentially that could help in the future.
Agreed. But it's a lot harder when you have a smaller population to create similar groups of need and really service kids. And I think what you said.
I think there's a couple pieces there, right, what we talked about in terms of scale and being able to pool your resources to fully meet the needs of students, but also workforce shortage. So Cassie, if you can expand on that, some of the trends we saw just with provisional licenses and.
Well, yeah, that there's workforce shortages and then gaps too, that post-COVID, and we didn't have this data included, but it is in the report. There's been a huge need for special education teachers, and they're not really available. And so there's been other pathways created that allows for folks to get a special education license, but they still might not have the robust background and training that you would get in a formal teacher training process. And so it does create gaps in our system on top of everything else that we've just described. And then also we know that we have a lot of licensed special education teachers in Vermont who aren't currently working in the field. And so what does that also say about our system and about folks wanting to serve in these roles?
I see Mohammed and Tom, both of you have your hands raised.
Mohammed is going first. Thank you very much. Hey, thank you for this wonderful presentation. I'm very appreciative of it. It's very meaningful. And as we continue to think about redistricting, I want to stress on staffing, as Lyle mentioned earlier. My first remark about special education, most importantly, is staffing. I've seen this issue in it long ago around the shortage. And my immediate conclusion is that it's because most of the instructional assistants hired to do the job are college students. Being a college student doesn't inform us or tell us this individual intends to stay as an IA, as a career. Yes, I understand there is an opportunity for anyone who want to become a special educator, to find a pathway to get there, to get the license. But how many of these IAs, college students, would be interested in that? We do not know. So to me, one of the major pieces around shortage in staffing is that we hire people without actually thinking of how long this individual is going to stick with us. I know it's hard to say, we're not going to hire you because you're here only as a college student and after 2 or 3 years you're gone. But we need to rethink differently around our hiring process and around retention. And one of the retention pieces I have to stress is the fact that there has been a modification around the licensing that would encourage people to go into the field. That's a huge plus already. But we need to think broader around retention, or to attract more folks to be interested in staying in Vermont and getting licensed in Vermont and be in the field to support special education.
Mohammed,
Again, thank you.
I appreciate that comment. I was just wondering, I know Andrew Proughton is on the line. Andrew, anything you want to share around licensing in response to Mohammed's questions, comments?
Yeah, sorry, to be honest, I was just deep in on an email. Was this on the preparation of special educators?
And the retention strategies and making sure that we really are able to address that workforce shortage. I know in our planning retreat, we're doing some work with our higher ed partners and we have some programs underway. Just thought you might be able to share a little more.
Yeah, there's a pretty big section in the report. We're definitely working with our ed prep programs on a number of different pieces. One thing that's really exciting with VTSU, we are trying to develop an apprenticeship model that would be for special ed and elementary education that could really help strengthen that pipeline there. On the retention piece, it's definitely really tricky, and I think this is kind of one of those like further inquiry, but we did some surveys a couple of years ago and of special ed directors, and one thing they indicated was that one of the reasons for burnout is just it increases in the amount of paperwork and the work that goes on behind the scenes that the special educators are required to do. And then later in the survey, we asked, like, how are you going to address shortages for your staff? And they said, well, we're going to increase caseloads, which will then ultimately lead to more. So it's just been this like cyclical problem where with fewer special educators, the workload's increasing for everybody else, which is then causing the burnout more. One thing that has been discussed, and I think there's some successful models, and I think as we look into redistricting, creating the ability to do this more, is having more specialized positions. So having special educators who focus primarily on the caseload, special educators who focus primarily on the evaluations, right? So that way, instead of one person doing everything for 15 students, you have a whole team of special educators who've really separated out the different components, sort of that old school industrialization, which I know is not always the best example when we're talking about education, but that seems to be a really useful model to help take that really intense burden off of individual special educators. So the more you're able to increase those resources and share those responsibilities, it seems that could then help retain the staff, right? Folks who are really good and really enjoy doing the in-classroom stuff versus the folks who really seem to excel at the case management and enjoy doing that. That's something that I would love to see more, and I think there could be more opportunities in the future for.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, of course.
Tom, final question?
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in, because I was on the census-based funding advisory group for a while, and it was really a question about how do you measure the success of the implementation of Act 173, and you mentioned it, that there's not real great visibility into the number of other kinds of instructional or learning support plans besides IEPs. And I'm wondering if you have any initial ideas on how you might quantify or monitor the number of kids receiving different kinds of support, because it's not just a special education bill, it's for all students who struggle. I'm wondering if you have some kind of model you're looking at for monitoring learning support for all students.
Do you want to take that one, Zoe? Do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, so we have some visibility into the number of 504s in our state. But again, to your point, we don't have visibility beyond some of the numbers. So for our special education division, we are mostly interested in getting out into the field to observe these systems in real time. But I think there's greater work that's going to be happening outside of our division to be really looking at Act 173 across the system. And that's where I would have Zoe or Aaron speak to that, what that's going to be.
I think we can recognize that districts are in different places in terms of implementation and providing that multi-tiered system of support. And part of the work moving forward is ensuring that we are able to appropriately provide that guidance and support of implementing those systems, and ensuring that we can also support teacher training around evidence-based practices. So when we talked about some of the data gaps we have, a lot of the data gaps we have are related to the implementation of instructional practices. We have a lot of data around financials, we have outcome data, and we have child count data. But what we're not really able to currently measure statewide is an understanding of the implementation of these instructional practices. And that's part of the work that we're going to be developing, and also accompanying that with a training and monitoring approach. And in working with educators through this steering committee, they've put forward some really concrete ideas for how we can do that. And that's really our next step. And we're looking at that monitoring and accountability really comprehensively. And that's part of the reason within our reorganization, we've also established another area focused on accountability, because that's accountability to the successful implementation of the Vermont education model, right? Holistically. And so we need really tools that can integrate and evaluate the degree to which we are successful in those efforts, and it will help us at the agency to differentiate our support depending on the training needs of districts across the state. So that's a huge focus for us.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. We're going to leave it there for now, but really appreciate the presentation and the good conversation, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing on this.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, team.
Okay, so I think at this point, we're going to take a 10-minute break. If we can try to get back here to start at 3 o'clock. Then we will pick up with an update from the Commission on the Future of Public Education in Vermont. All right, we good? All right, we are back. Just a little extra bit of a break there. I did. Also, I would like us to pick up the independent school approvals next. Tom, if you're ready, not to spring this on you. Because I know that some board members need to leave early, and we do need to vote on these things, and so I want to make sure that we accomplish this agenda item before people need to leave and potentially we have quorum issues.
Sure, great.
Thank you.
We have two schools this afternoon. Both of them involve amendments, but one of them, the first one, Laraway School, is a renewal of approval and an amendment. So I'll take up Laraway School first. Laraway School is in Johnson. It's a therapeutic school run in association with Washington County Mental Health. It serves children in grades kindergarten through 12 or ages 5 through 22. It's approved for a maximum of 40 students. There are 24 at the time of the visit. They're approved to serve students with multiple categories of special education. They run on a 200-day academic calendar. Some things that are notable about Laraway, excellent staff and excellent school, received rave reviews from the agency team, very effective in educating the students that attend there, exceptionally well staffed. They use universal design throughout. Besides their core curriculum, they offer several specials, an art program, community projects and partnerships, and a farm-to-school program which involves a sugar house, a greenhouse, a bread oven, gardens, and fruit trees. Their core staff has been with the school for 7 to 10 years, which, just piggybacking off the retention conversation we just had, they're blessed with great retention. Their ratio of staff to students is 1 to 4. They have 4 special educators, 1 special ed intern, 8 classroom teachers, and 8 behavior interventionists. Their campus is relatively large, 39 acres, includes a school building, an administration building, 2 yurts, and an art building, as well as all of those farm-to-school facilities I mentioned earlier. They have an on-site nursing staff, and they have split into 3 divisions: elementary, middle school, and high school. They also run a backpack program in area schools, mostly Lamoille North and South districts. And it's through that backpack program that they discovered the need for, or the demand for, more services. The LEAs have asked for them to add a program for children in K through 8, specifically designed to deal with their needs in autism, which again, we just heard about. The program has been designed using MTSS and best practices. The plan is to start this new program with 5 students. They're able to house it in the elementary wing of their current facility. They are currently hiring their new staff, elementary classroom teacher, 5 intensive needs specialists, a coordinator, a pod head, administrator, a clinician, and a behavioral consultant. They are in compliance with all health and safety and other required activities. The agency completed a desk audit and found them meeting all standards. So I would like to, our committee would like to make the motion that the State Board of Education grant renewal of therapeutic school approval to the Laraway School of Johnson, Vermont, to serve students in grades K through 12, and approve an amendment to add a program for students with intensive needs called SHINES, S-H-I-N-E-S. The renewal and amendment approval is for the full term of 5 years through June 30, 2030. This approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment, program, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period.
I'll second.
That's my motion.
I'll second it.
All right, so Tom made the motion, Rich has seconded it. Is there any conversation, discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions? All right, the motion carries.
May I ask Secretary Saunders a question?
Sure.
Do we have, I'm just trying to think about coverage of therapeutic schools across the state and the extent to which students who live in certain geographic areas have access to therapeutic schools. Do we have a geographic mapping of all the therapeutic schools that are available?
We do. That's a layer in the redistricting mapping tool that's available on the Agency of Administration's website.
Okay, thanks. There's more curiosity. We're just
Yes.
thinking this through as we're approving schools and having new programs come online. I think it's going to be an important consideration that we keep an eye on making sure that we've got a well-represented portfolio of programs, for particularly students with significant needs.
And some of what we're seeing, as we describe in the report, is that our larger districts are establishing separate schools within the
Yeah.
district system, along with other in-house
Yeah.
supports. And so that's the broader conversation
Right.
as we're thinking about
And
scale.
BOCES as well, right?
Yes, about
Okay.
thinking about scale and ensuring the resource allocation, and BOCES is something we're really looking closely at
Okay.
in terms of the shared services.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Related but unrelated question.
Follows nicely after the last presentation.
It does, it does.
Thank you. Tom, back to you.
Yes, the second school is the Pondbrook School in Bristol, a fascinating kind of school. We approved this in 2023. It's run under the auspices of the Willowell Foundation. It has been since 2001. It is not eligible for public tuition, but they currently have 7 publicly placed students from Lincoln. It's a traveling school. So they meet every morning on Bristol Green. They plan for their day, give out assignments, and part of what they discuss is how will we function today, given the weather, for example. And so that is part of that morning meeting that takes about an hour every morning. They serve grades 7 through 9. The amendment that we have before us is their request to add grades 10 through 12, because Willowell has some experience with high school students through project-based Walden program, and they feel that this program could benefit students in the upper grades as well as in those middle grades. Most of their class time is spent in natural areas. Classes taught out of backpacks. They do some Chromebook and notebook work, but a lot of it is hands-on exploratory work. They have a theme every year that unifies their curriculum. This year it's We the People. It's a standards-based curriculum, and their goal is to create agencies in these young people. And I just love this quote that came out in our meeting, and also to bolster their soul and spirit, which became an important point when we talked about the success of these students when they transition back into a normal or more traditional setting. They do have some facilities available if the weather's really bad. If they need, there's some buildings available through Willowell and their Moncton site. Typically, though, they travel throughout the region in small vehicles. They currently serve 15 students and 3 teachers. The max they see is 20, mostly for logistical issues. Over half of their students are on 504 IEP plans. And it's actually geared to help students whose families can't afford to get them these outdoor experiences. So students from the lower SES strata. It is currently funded through tuition, both through the Lincoln School District and through parents privately, and through some scholarships through Willowell. But it's a fascinating program. I don't know if Eric Warren was on the call, but he did a great job explaining and was speaking with enthusiasm about what kind of changes he sees in these kids as he's teaching them out in the field. So our committee would like to recommend that the state board grants an amendment to the Pondbrook project in Bristol to add grades 10 through 12 to its current independent school approval period to serve students in grades 7 through 9. And so this amendment will be added to their, and will come up for discussion again when their approval comes up again. Serve students in grades 7 through 9, which has been extended due to compliance with submission of a timely application pursuant to 2224 application, reapplication for approval process. Pond Brook project is not eligible for public funding pursuant to Act 73. And this approval is conditional on the requirement that the school reports to the Agency of Education within 5 business days whenever any changes occur in enrollment programs, policies, facilities, financial capacity, staffing, or administration during the approval period. That's my motion.
I'll second that
All right.
motion too.
Made by Tom, seconded by Rich. Discussion? I have a couple of questions. And I do remember when Pond Brook came before the board a couple of years ago. It is a really fascinating and cool concept for a school that I think is really, meeting some needs of, a certain number of students. So I appreciate the work that's being done. I guess my first question is, are there currently any students at Pond Brook who are receiving public tuition that are being grandfathered?
I do not know the answer to that, but I do see, I think it's, Leanne might be here on the meeting. She might be able to answer that question.
Yes, hello. And Eric should be joining momentarily. I think you're a little ahead of the game
Yeah,
today.
and I apologize for that.
I'm happy to answer those questions. Yes, we have 7. We have 7 students currently from Lincoln, and we have 4 out of those 7 that are grandfathered in.
Okay. Because what I'm wondering, and I feel like maybe the board needs to have some time to consider what I'm about to say, is I know with Act 73, it grandfathers students, and I think in the normal course of events, you would imagine that maybe a student was in a K-8 school, they're currently in 5th grade, they get grandfathered until they graduate in 8th grade, and then that's the end of it. The question for me is you guys are expanding the grades that are offered and actually increasing them. So conceptually, you could have a student who's currently in 8th grade. Is that student now grandfathered through 9th grade? Or if we increase the classes, are we also saying that student is grandfathered through now 12th grade? And I don't have an answer to that. I don't know if you have a position on that, but I think, we do now have an attorney. And I'm wondering, I'm just putting this out to the board, if it would make sense to, give our attorney some time to research the issue and then come back and revisit this issue at our November meeting. Just because I realize we're just talking about Pond Brook today, but I want to be very, very careful that whatever the board decides to do, it will have precedential value, and this is something that I think I would like to have a little bit more information on before I make a decision that might affect other schools that aren't before us at the moment, but very well might be in the future.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Follow-up?
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask the same thing, because it's not eligible for public tuition, but he did say that there is a school district that's paying money, so, and I understand the legacy thing, but I think we can still approve it because we're approving an independent school. And if that has to come up, the AOE can figure that out at a later date. We can still approve it because we approve other independent schools that aren't able to accept public funds, don't we?
Correct. I'm just wondering if they're already approved.
Yeah.
And we approved them, I think, 2 years ago or 3 years ago. The only reason they're back before the board is because they want our approval to expand the program to include 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
And we could approve other schools that can't accept public funds to expand their offerings. And I don't think that makes a big difference into whether or not, then it'll be just up for the agency education to decide if they're going to be able to get public funds for that or not. And I don't think that should affect our decision, right?
I don't think it's up to the agency to make that decision.
Well, who makes that decision?
So this is localized to those students that are grandfathered in and would be able to continue.
Well, the argument goes the other way too, right? Like, so what happens if if you're grandfathering a student in and now they're going to have a smaller number of grade levels? I understand your point, but that's not one of the conditions of us reviewing and approving of independent school is whether or not they grandfather students for grades going forward. Am I right? Like, I'm just trying to think through, like, what are our criteria for approving independent schools? Right. So I think it's a policy question. It's probably one of those policy questions that the legislature probably, I suspect that a good look at statute isn't going to provide us a lot of clarity on that, because I think this is one of those things that might not have been contemplated, but it is not a criteria before us for approving or disapproving an independent school. I think it's a consideration for policymakers, but I think it's outside our jurisdiction to make that call. Like, that doesn't fall under our purview in terms of deciding whether or not this is a school that's approved or not.
That's what I was trying to get to.
That doesn't negate, I think what Chair Samuelson has brought up is a really important policy consideration, right? And I think especially with lots of new law, when we have new laws, these are the kinds of things that come up that might not have been contemplated. And so I think this would be something we would want to flag for the legislature. But unless there's something I don't know about, there's nothing in 2200 at this time. And maybe this is something we have to contemplate in 2200 and types of, but like, right now, there's nothing that says that that is a criteria that we have to apply or consider in approving. So I'm kind of I hear you, and I think it's an important issue, but I also don't know that we can address that because it's not in our rubric for approving or disapproving schools at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you are right. Bring it back to 2200. There's nothing in there.
Right.
And I don't mean to be stirring the pot on
No,
this.
I don't think you're stirring the pot. I think it's actually a really important, that's why I said, I think it's an important policy question. I think it's one that we should be keeping track of these things that come up and have feedback back to the legislature. There may be things we want to consider if and when we open up rules to tweak.
Well,
right? Like, it's one of those things. We have a new bill, we have a new statute, right? And it didn't contemplate all of these kinds of things, right? And this would be one of those things that it didn't contemplate. However, under our existing rules, I don't want to penalize this school under our existing rules because by not approving them today, right? On the recommendations, because we don't have an answer to a question that ultimately is a statutory.
Yeah. So section 22 of Act 73 says a school district that pays tuition pursuant to the provisions of 16 VSA Chapter 21, in effect on June 30th, 2025, shall continue to pay tuition on behalf of a resident student enrolled for the 24-25 school year in or who has been accepted for enrollment for the 25-26 school year by an approved independent school, subject to the provisions of 16 VSA Section 828, in effect on June 30th, 2025, until such time as the student graduates from that school.
So if this school puts in place additional grade levels, right, under 2200, we have to evaluate, from my perspective, we have to evaluate their request to add grade levels and move their curriculum around pursuant to 2200, right? There's nothing in statute that says we have to consider that in our approval process. That said, I think it's an important policy consideration that we should elevate back to the legislature.
And Sarah wants to say.
Yeah, I see that Sarah, and then I also see, is it Leanne from Pondbrook? You have your hand raised. I'm going to let Sarah speak, and then we'll go back to Pondbrook.
I think you are on the right track in saying there's two different roles that the board plays. One is in approving the grades. The second role that you'll have is, should there be a time that a student seeks approval for public tuition for a grade that is a new one, and the local district denies it, that denial, that appeal can come to the board. And at that point, the board decides how it's going to interpret what Jennifer just read. And I do think there is a way to interpret this to say that it is for the grade levels that were in place, prior to today. So but that's a policy discussion that the board could have if that appeal process comes to that point. And an avenue the board could take is to keep these two as separate steps, review your duties under 2200, and move forward one way or the other today, and acknowledging what you've heard about perhaps what may be some expectation for financial means for continued operation of those newly expanded grades, you may consider adopting a procedure or a policy that is simply providing guidance on how you will interpret that in the future so that parties are sort of able to make decisions knowing what that would look like in the future. And then the school could make, its decisions about whether it does continue to enroll and expand with this approval, and folks know where that money stands. So you can probably do these in 2 steps.
I see, I think your name is Leanne, and I'm sorry if I've gotten it wrong, from Pondbrook.
Yes, it's Leanne, thank you. I just wanted to say foundationally, there's a lot of parent demand currently for additions of grades for our school just because of the really sort of imperative work that we've done with students who otherwise would be sort of falling through the cracks. And I know that there's so much policy that's taking place that really deserves great weight and consideration. But also when we're talking about the kids in a foundational sense and in real terms, adding these grades would do them a great service. And a lot of these kids, as Tom said, are folks who would not have access to this kind of a program otherwise. So I just wanted to state that as you consider how you'll proceed today.
Leanne, can you remind us what percentage of students receive public tuition? What percentage of your students right now? I remember reading it.
There are 7 from Lincoln, and there are 16 students in total.
There are 7 from Lincoln?
Correct.
And so half of your students right now? Okay.
Just about.
And they're all from Lincoln?
Yes, 7 out of the 16 are from Lincoln.
Okay, thank you.
So I think,
So I still have the motion on the floor. I don't know if it's been seconded or not.
it has,
Yeah.
Rich seconded it. Rich seconded it.
That's how we had discussion.
So I think, let me revise, because I think this has been a very fruitful conversation. Always helpful to bring it back to the rules, I should know that. I think today's discussion is really based on, does the proposed addition of the grade levels, does that meet the requirements of 2200? That's the discussion for today. That's what we'll be voting on. And then I think separately and independent of that, it might be fruitful to have Sarah do some research on this so that we can provide guidance for this school and other schools in the future as to what the board's position is going to be on whether, if you increase the grades that are offered at a school, is it, until that student graduates, or is it as, are the students grandfathered for those students that were in the school for the grades that were offered as of June 30th, 2025? So I think that's the decision. But in the meantime, I think we can bring it back to Tom's motion, and if there's any other or no other discussion, we can take a vote. All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving Tom's motion, please raise your hand and signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, please raise your hand and signify by saying nay. Any abstentions?
To the point of order, I think going forward, if there's a unanimous vote when we're doing virtual meetings, we should also do a roll call.
So we have it if it's unanimous.
What we've done, and we were told it was okay, is as when I chair it, I'll say it appears to be a unanimous decision, and I'll give people a second to say disagree with me, and then I'll say it is a unanimous decision, because technically, when you have a hybrid meeting, you are supposed to do roll call votes. So that's covered it, because we did get challenged on that once.
Yeah.
And that was okay.
Yep, as long as you clarify that you got it.
All right.
Yeah.
So, hearing no abstentions, no nays, it appears to be unanimous. We've approved the motion. Thank you.
It is unanimous. Move on.
All right. Thank you.
So much fun. Can I also make just another kind of note?
Yes.
So in a class one time, I got beat up pretty bad for using the term grandfathered, as it's a racist term that came out of the post-Civil War period, and we're supposed to use the word legacied. And I wouldn't have, the only reason I bring it up is I got hammered pretty hard for saying that word, and I did not know that, and I was taken aback, so,
Should bring that up to the legislature.
yes, I know. I can't believe they left it in there and got away with it.
All right, so I'm going to bring us back to agenda item H, which is the update on the Commission of Future Public Education in Vermont. So since the board's last meeting in September, the commission had one meeting just because of the way the months fell. At that meeting, we discussed the very first very rough draft of the report, and the way that report was generated was Jay Nichols is now chairing the committee, and he took any feedback from any commission member and put it in the report, and then we went through and discussed it sort of topic by topic. So he cast a very broad net, and then we were discussing it and, moving through it. The report is due to be published after our meeting next Monday to finalize the draft, and then from there, we will solicit feedback from members of the public, incorporate such feedback that the commission votes on into our final recommendations, and then the final report is due to the General Assembly in December. We've pushed that date out. It was December 1st. I believe it's now December 15th or shortly thereafter. Two other things to highlight, though. One is the commission has created a survey seeking input from all Vermonters, not just educators, family, students, parents, but all Vermonters, really trying to get the word out there and get input from everyone about their educational priorities and concerns. It is estimated that the survey will take about 8 to 10 minutes to complete. Interested people should complete the survey by October 31st. I did include a link to the survey in the agenda packet. I've also sent it to all board members in the hopes that you will forward it on to your friends and colleagues with a personal request that people fill it out, because that's always helpful. So the survey is out, it's live now, and then the other part of seeking more public information and providing more opportunities for people to interact with the commission and provide their viewpoints is there are 5 additional public input sessions that have been scheduled, and this is hot off the press. These are all virtual sessions. There's nothing in person, but the 5 virtual sessions are scheduled for Monday, November 10th from 2 to 3, Tuesday, November 11th from 10 to 11, Wednesday, November 12th from 5 to 6, Tuesday, November 18th from 5 to 6, and Wednesday, November 19th from 12 to 1. So hopefully we will get good feedback. I've heard that already 2,000 surveys have already been submitted with responses. So, any questions? All right. With that, we have committee updates. So Rich, I will start with you.
We are going to be meeting tomorrow. I forget the exact time, but it'll be on my calendar.
So this is State Aid for School
Yep,
Construction
State Aid
Advisory
for
Board?
School Construction Advisory Board, say it 10 times fast. And I just want to recognize Suzanne, because it's appropriate we're in the music room, because she's a rock star on doing these things, and you're very fortunate to have her working in
She's
your
amazing.
agency.
I agree.
And she's kept me really straight and moving forward. And tomorrow we have, but I can't say anything about your raise. Sorry. But we have the chair of the House Ed Committee coming tomorrow to kind of give us some background on what they were looking for and what they were hoping to accomplish and any discussions they had. And as Suzanne said, he's probably the most of the meeting. We've got him for about an hour with some questions. And we have 2 other meetings scheduled after that of a couple hours each, and we're hoping to make some kind of recommendation that we're required to make by the beginning of December. And I don't know if it's going to be real recommendations or just maybe some things to consider. But we just had the gentleman from the bond, I don't want to say bank, it was a bond bank, which was really kind of cool. He gave us some kind of insight on what bonds are out there and some things to consider. And it was kind of a little back and forth between them and the representative from the treasurer's office But I think it was some really good information. It's a really good group of people, and we've got, like I said, 3 more meetings, and hopefully we'll get the first part of our task completed, and then we've got some time to go through the second part of our task.
Well, thank you. And I know that things sort of got off to a uneven start, but it seems like you guys have some good momentum and.
There was some confusion. I wasn't sure how to go about it in moving forward, and I will also recognize our chair and vice chair on this committee for some really great advice and reaching out to the chair of, I did reach out to the chair of the Senate Education Committee also, never heard back from him, but I did, the gentleman from House was really good, and we had a really good conversation for an hour, and I felt much better after talking with him. So.
Terrific.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. And thank Suzanne, too, again. She's doing a good job for me.
We could not be here without Suzanne.
No.
Any questions or comments for Rich? Don't see anyone online, don't see anyone here. Tammy, I will turn it to you for sparse schools and small schools.
We're going to call it the by necessity committee because we are not relitigating the definition of small and sparse. We are considering what the definition of by necessity might be. The committee met last Friday on October 10th. We took testimony from a broad range of constituent groups in the state. Including some superintendents, Jay Nichols from the Principals Association, John Castle from VREC. We also received data, thank you to the agency, and we are going to be taking some of those data and some additional data and passing that along to our Center for Vermont Geographic Information to do some mapping for us that's different than the tool that's out there right now because we need driving distances, but it needs to be driving distances to schools of comparable grade levels within a district. And that's not something that your team could do. So we have some new data files that we're going to be sharing with them, and they're going to pull that information together. We are going to have a public listening session on October 24th at 6 p.m. for an hour, and that'll just be open to the public then. So we're progressing with our work.
Is that a static map that you'll be creating, or is it
It's a static map. We need to know, not as a crow flies, but actual driving times that take into account topography, right, between schools that are small, that are under 100, and their proximity driving time to the nearest school in the district that operates with the same grade levels. It's a straightforward thing, but what your team provided us is a list of schools that were small, right, and met the small criteria. They didn't have the information to do the drive time mapping, and so we were able to pull that. And the files that we have don't have grade levels with the schools, and so we merged them with the Common Core data easily and are getting that information back to the GIS folks to do that analysis for us.
I'd just be interested to look at how that's different than how we're depicting drive times on the tool, just for the benefit also of the redistricting task force. So
yeah, it should be the same. I think what we're trying to do is we want to know, we have a very distinct question, right? And our distinct question, rather than going through individually for every school, right, they're going to run a set of code that basically says we have school X that's under 100 students. Within that district, is there another school with those same grade levels, right? That's the first question. And then if there is, what are the and if there's more than one, maybe, what are the actual driving times to each one of those schools from that school?
Yeah, be interested to see it.
Yeah, so it's not, the idea, and that'll give us just a file, and that's not going through and doing the interactive, because the interactive, we'd have to go school by school by school by school, we'd have to figure out which schools in the district or which grade levels.
We're doing certain filtering.
Right, so it's just a certain routine.
So I'm curious.
But the underlying assumptions are the same, right? Like, we're not using different assumptions, right? Because the same people created the map, the interactive tool. What we're asking for is a very specific request. And so if you think about a line in a data file, you'll have school X that's small, and this is the distance to this school that in the district that has these grade levels. This is the different, it might be, right?
Or
to
might be
each-
outside of that district, too.
Right, our request is within the district right now.
Tammy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just wanted to clarify, I had down in my notes that we were meeting on November 7th for the public meeting, not October 24th.
Okay, my notes said the 24th, but I can check on that.
I believe that was the week that we.
Okay. Let me
we said was not going to
reconfirm. It
work.
might be November 7th. I do have multiple dates written down here. So I highlighted that one in pink. Sorry, Cynthia, if I highlighted the wrong one. Thanks for clarifying.
So with the by necessity, the definition is going from distance from.
We have not
current-
decided on a definition. We're just taking in
Okay.
different kinds of data that we'd want to consider in thinking about a definition. And one of the requests for data that came from the committee was, we'd like to know driving times.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is, are you also considering driving time from a student's house to that other school?
We do not have student level data. You cannot do that.
But, I mean, I'm not saying like specific students, but just conceptually, like what if a student is driving 20 minutes to get to the school, and then there's like another 20 minutes to get to the next closest school?
These would be things that the committee will need to discuss. I think we do not have student level data. There's no way to actually map that with respect. First of all, the data don't exist at the state level, and second of all, it would violate FERPA if we did, right? We can't do that. So as a data point, that I think the committee is just trying to get a sense of what this all looks like, right? And so this was part of the initial data request that we pulled together. I don't know how or in what way those data might inform a decision at this point. We haven't looked at them. So.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking like from a practical standpoint, if I were a parent, it would be less relevant to me that it's like another 20 minutes to get to the next school in the district. What would be more relevant to me is how long is it going to take me to get my kid to school?
I think that we haven't had a chance to discuss that in the committee. We just got the data request back. We created an initial data request at our first meeting within the parameters of data, available data. We have not moved on to really talking about criteria. We are still very much as a committee in the listening mode, so we can certainly consider that as a point of input as well.
Okay.
And it'll be interesting when you do that original map to see if the closest school may actually be outside of the district.
Well, you know,
And
we
that could
haven't
inform-
actually given them the request. I can add that in there
it'd just be
if you'd like to,
interesting, yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think that would be a helpful tie back to
That's
the
fine.
district.
Right.
task force.
I
We
would,
can
yeah,
certainly
I
do
think
that.
that'd be really good for
We
schools
can
to
certainly
look
add
at.
that, we can, right, our initial request was within the district. I mean, and the data
sure there'll be
files are
many
gonna
more
go over,
requests.
we're gonna, well, I mean, we don't have a lot of time to do a lot of requests, right? And so, I mean, we're going to be giving this over to that team, you know, maybe today, if not tomorrow, right, with these updated data files for them.
Sure.
And then I can ask them to do that too. But
It'd just be interesting to see.
yeah, but to be clear, it's the same underlying models. Like, we're not creating two separate models between what's the interactive and what this would be. It would be very cumbersome to have to go through school by school by school by school with the interactive tool to figure this all out, as opposed to having them run one routine and give us one data file. That's all. Same technology underlying.
Yeah, no.
Tom, I
It's good to
see
see it different ways.
you have your hand raised.
Yeah, not to add another data point, but just, so my assumption.
Y'all can come to the committee
Candy, is
meetings
that-
anytime. Go ahead, Tom.
So much
But
interest.
my assumption is that schools are located in a centrally positioned site in that district, which might not be the right assumption. I guess that would be something would be pretty easily checked. Something that would be harder, but I think would be maybe more pertinent to Jennifer's point, is there must be somewhere a population density map that you could overlay districts on, just to see what the likelihood of where people would be traveling from, without actually having to violate FERPA or do student-specific, but just the likelihood
Yeah.
of where people
Let
might
me
be
talk
coming
to them
from.
about, I mean, I'm also trying to be respectful of their time and energy here. I can ask them about if they can overlay population density. That was not something the committee had requested, but I can see the value in that, and let me see if there's an easy way to have them do that. Again, this is all just context for the conversation, right? I mean, the committee is going to come back to the full board with some ideas around how to define by necessity. And, by necessity might include a recommendation around drive times, but not a specific drive time, right? Like, ultimately, the legislature is going to make the decision here on what it wants to do, right? Not us. This isn't going rule.
Right.
This is just to be clear, we're making a recommendation back to the legislature. This is not going to be adopted in state board rule.
Right.
Right? So, like what Rich is doing, I would contemplate that our recommendations coming from this board might provide a broad sort of set of constructs that they would want to consider, and we can certainly point them to the data that we collected.
And then recommendations for other things that they might want to be considering.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I don't anticipate that this is going to be taken up independent of these other efforts. So that's why I'm being a little careful with the data requests, because there's a lot of data flying around.
Yeah. Other comments or questions? All right, thank you. Thank you for your work. All right, Zoe, Secretary's report.
Okay, excellent. Well, since I'm here at Slate Valley, I want to start by giving a shout out to Slate Valley and invite Katie Smith to come back up and to share just very briefly how this district is really creatively using Medicaid to run their services. So we didn't get a chance to touch on that, so Katie wanted to come back and just share that out briefly. Thank you, Katie.
Hello, I'm Katie Smith, and I'm the Education Medicaid Director at the Agency of Education. And just one takeaway.
Let's make sure your mic's on. Hold on.
Oh, is it on?
Is her mic on?
There's only so much I can lift.
Okay.
Is that better?
That's right.
No, it's this. Oh, it's this
We
one?
want the school celebration to be loud, so.
Okay. All right. So the takeaway I'd like you to have for the Education Medicaid funds is that schools can be creative with how they reinvest them, and that Vermont stands out nationally because we have that requirement to reinvest the funds into prevention and intervention programs. And reviewing Slate Valley's report on how they use the funds in fiscal year 25, I was highly impressed with how they consider their students and all the ways that they reinvest those funds. And so it's clear that Slate Valley is thoughtful and intentional in their reinvestment with clear goals that are tied to their continuous improvement plan. Sorry, this is very small. In addition to providing strategic PBIS training and programming, Slate Valley addresses wraparound supports to students in nearly all the areas that Cassie spoke to earlier. They have a Vermont Outdoor Adventure Program, which partners with the local mental health agency to provide supports to students in grades 1st through 9th who are experiencing social, emotional, and behavioral challenges within the typical classroom setting and are in need of experiential learning and problem-solving opportunities. There's also the Snack Shack program, which you heard about earlier, and that connects students to meet their basic needs. They also use the funds for a homeschool liaison that connects families with resources to address things such as housing and food insecurity needs and engages with parents and families as partners to ensure their children are set up for success at school. And they are also addressing how staff can support students through classroom regulation with a board-certified behavior analyst that helps them develop behavioral response plans for use throughout the general education program. Sorry, that's a lot, but.
Thank you for sharing.
I was just very impressed with how they're being intentional with their fund use. So, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for all you're doing at Slate Valley. Wanted to make sure we could recognize you. For the rest of my report, I want to provide a brief update on where we are with our strategic planning process and how that's guiding all of the work that we're doing at the agency. We continue to be very data-driven in how we are approaching this work. And so as we look at the data, Vermont has been making national headlines recently for declining performance on the NAEP assessment. And I recently responded to an article from the Boston Globe because it indicated that we don't care in Vermont, and that is absolutely not the case. And so my response was really clear in saying that we do very much care about education in Vermont, but we also need to be clear-eyed around some of the systemic barriers that we have. and work really intentionally to supporting our educators and our districts and really helping our students meet their full potential. And that's particularly true in our rural areas and our economically disadvantaged areas. So as we look at the data, we also see consistent trends on our Vermont CAP data. So our preliminary state assessment results will be released this week. And we've demonstrated little improvement over the past 3 years, with the exception of ELA having increases in 4th and 5th graders. And we're seeing persistent gaps with students on an IEP. Additionally, what we highlighted today with our special education report is we've identified that underlying challenge of quality general instruction, making sure that that's happening in every classroom and that our struggling learners get access to the intervention supports that they need, regardless of whether or not they have an IEP. So I share all this because we need to face the realities of some of the data that we are looking at in the state. This doesn't mean we don't have bright spots, and we've heard some bright spots here today in our work here in Slate Valley. But we're really, as an agency, focusing on how we can address these systemic barriers together and to doing that collectively. To that end, the agency's done a lot of reflection on how we can strengthen the support that we are providing to the field. We engaged in a very comprehensive listen and learn where we collected that input from our educators. We also participated in a monitoring visit from the U.S. Department of Education that identified these key areas where we needed to strengthen our support. And the agency has been very intentional over the last year and a half of really looking at realigning our work and establishing different integrated teams to strengthen our support. So most recently and notably, we've gone through a significant reorganization. I shared the details of that with the board last month. That is all designed to increase our ability to effectively support the priorities of the state of Vermont and to strengthen our education system. Additionally, we're working side by side with educators to identify how we can focus on implementation. So you can hear a consistent theme. One of the things I really value about Vermont is that we have identified the best practices. We have in law the systems that we need. We've identified the need for early childhood education and wraparound support and extended learning opportunities through after school. Act 173 is identifying those practices of multi-tiered systems of support. And we recently passed a literacy bill to ensure that we are teaching the science of reading and preparing our teachers. So we have all of these pieces in law. And now we're really focusing on the implementation of that. Our strategic planning retreat is designed to do just that. November 4th, we will have a statewide planning retreat. We're bringing together all of our districts to really think with us on how we can really operationalize our strategic plan. Knowing that we have our key pillars established, we will have working groups assigned to think through very tactical ways that we can advance this work. So we're excited to do that work. We're motivated. I do encourage you all to participate in that statewide planning retreat. Again, it is on November 4th. That day will be dedicated to developing a statewide vision for education and doing that with all of our stakeholders across Vermont. We will be involving our education leaders, our higher education partners, students, legislators that sit on the education committees, state board members. So we're really looking for this to be a very robust conversation. And then after our planning retreat, there's going to be some additional opportunities for students to be further involved in providing input around this vision for education. So that's something we are really looking forward to do and alongside the board and hope that you will participate in that work. So I wanted to give you a sense of what to expect at the planning retreat. We're going to focus a lot on this vision development work at the beginning of the session, and then there will be breakout groups. There's one pathway that's focused on the statewide graduation requirements. And of course, the input that we receive through that process will come to you as a board in December in the form of a report. Today, you're going to get an update of where we are in our planning process. We are encouraging every supervisory union, supervisory district to have a representative on that graduation pathway. We are seeing that as setting the standard of excellence for education, and really want to make sure we have broad-based input and engagement in that effort. For those that are not participating in that pathway, we have an array of workshops that they can sign up for that's aligned to our pillars of our strategic plan. The pillars of our strategic plan are designed to elevate academic excellence, expand college and career readiness, promote safe and healthy schools, improve operational effectiveness, and enhance special education and differentiated support for all learners. So the workshops, I'll just kind of give you a sampling of what that will look like. We will have a session thinking about the student information and financial systems, so thinking about some of the operational components, reimagining personalized learning plans, really thinking about our vision and how to cascade that vision from the state level to the district level all the way into each classroom. So we're going to be engaging teachers and supporting us with that. We'll provide some technical support around the district quality and education quality standards beta test. That work is underway. Our districts are doing their self-evaluations now. We'll also have a session on the strategic plan for special education. There's a business operations workshop. We will also be hosting a session around the educator workforce development, something really relevant to our conversation today. This is really framed as we've talked a lot about changing the standards for students, and so we need to think about how those teacher preparation programs are coming along in alignment. We will dedicate some time to also talk about how we can strengthen our reporting and monitoring tools. And so that is overarching, and we really want to think in a systematic way with our partners in the field around the data that is most timely and useful to inform decision-making. And we will have a session also on hazing, harassment, and bullying, that model policy that we're developing. So just to give you a sense of the type of work that we'll be engaging in that statewide planning retreat, and we really do hope that you can participate. It will directly inform many of the recommendations that we bring to you as a state board, and also recommendations to the General Assembly next session to advance the efforts around education transformation. Those are my updates. The other piece that I'll just add is, in addition to the planning retreat, we have a lot of trainings underway in the fall. And again, just really as an agency, we're working intentionally to ensure that we're providing the right level of support. So in the fall, we have a training for special education directors. We are also partnering with UVM on 2 large conferences, one focused on chronic absenteeism and the other on literacy. And we will have our Governor's School Safety Conference also in the fall. So really excited about that work. And something that sounds simple, but turned out to be very challenging, is we published a directory. So the Agency of Education directory is live, and that is exciting. It's just another way for us. I know we're all kind of laughing because it was much harder than we thought it would be. But now that is live, and it's a tool for the field so that they know who to contact if they have a question. It's also a resource for you as state board members. You can search by just keywords as well to find the right person that you need to go to, and it will help us also better coordinate within the agency. So that's all in an effort to improve and strengthen customer service to the field.
Is that online?
It is online. It is our website. Yes. And it will be updated periodically. So those are all the updates. Any questions for me?
So the retreat on the 4th.
Yes.
State Board of Ed, you're sort of thinking of them as, education partners that will help to further the conversation about the strategic vision and then what we're going to end up talking about in future meetings.
Yes.
So it would be very helpful for board members to be there to the extent their schedules allow.
It would be really helpful. I think it's just to provide that context of that conversation. All of those discussions will inform the recommendations we bring to you as a board. So I think it would be incredibly valuable to have your participation at the conference.
Other questions for Zoe? It does seem like you've been very busy.
Yes, yes.
Are you fully staffed?
We actually are really doing well. In terms of our vacancy rates, you can always access that online, but we've been able to, recruit and hire for some critical roles. Part of our reorganization was also identifying where we had some vacancies. There were some roles that we kind of changed those job descriptions to better meet the needs of the field and align to our priorities as an agency. So it's more than vacancies. We've also been really intentional about taking a strengths-based approach and really looking at how we can leverage the skills and expertise of our state leaders to support the priorities of Vermont. And so that has resulted in folks being able to better leverage their background and skills in new ways. So we're very excited about that. So it's more than just vacancies. It's really about really honoring and lifting up the skills of every member of the Agency of Education to support our collective work. So we're excited about that.
you.
And there's some new roles we've created which we're now recruiting for. But that was kind of intentional.
You've had a lot of people do some presentations in the last, and
Yeah.
it seems like everybody's doing really good. Everybody
Yeah.
seems very upbeat, and you seem very upbeat.
Yeah.
So.
We've got great momentum. Thank you for recognizing it. The team's doing really hard work. We always say it's hard work, but it's the right work. It's the right work, and that really builds excitement and energy and focus because we're very mission driven.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will keep you in the hot seat for the graduation requirements update.
I'm going to have Erin come up to be in the hot seat. So Erin Davis will provide us with an update on the graduation requirements. I am going to refresh my screen because I think you might have made a quick update to that.
We did.
And, oh, you know what? I'm not logged into the meeting. I apologize, Erin. Let me log back in so I can share your slides.
While Zoe pulls that up, I just want to reintroduce myself. I'm Dr. Erin Davis. I'm the new Chief Academic Officer. I am just shy of the 3-month mark of being in my role. It feels like longer in the best way possible. As Zoe said, we've been very busy, lots of important work underway. Among that has been the graduation requirements recommendations that we're preparing to share with you. Are you?
I'm sharing my screen, but I'm not sure if it's, oh, okay, we're just switching.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Let me know if I should slide it back or forward. Any adjustments I'm happy to make. Do you need me to keep talking in order to evaluate?
I can
that?
see
Okay.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll have 5 more people tell you.
That's up there.
Well, I had the pleasure of joining some of you this morning to tour the school, and it's really been one of the greatest pleasures of the role so far has been when we get a chance to get out in the field. Just want to acknowledge the hard work that Brooke and her team are doing here. Was really excited to see all the students so highly engaged in all the classrooms that I got to visit this morning. Okay, looks like we're in business. We've got my slides up here. The slide I shared previously in August, and this is just an overview of what we've all been tasked with here, right? So Section 9A of Act 73 requires that the Agency of Education makes a recommendation to the State Board of Education about standards for statewide graduation requirements. That is in the form of a report that we will deliver by the end of the calendar year, coming up here in December of 2025. And we really see these recommendations for statewide graduation requirements as a, you went ahead faster than me, if you don't mind going back, an opportunity to set the standard for excellence for graduates throughout the state of Vermont, and an opportunity to promote more equity and consistency of rigor in terms of what's happening from one school to the next, one supervisory union to the next. We also see this as a way to kind of view it as like a first domino. By knowing what the finish line is, that actually sets us up to review and really tighten up what the vertical alignment and integration of expectations are across the full pre-K through 12 system. And we are aligning this to the Vermont Portrait of a Graduate, And you all actually gave us some helpful feedback when I saw you in August about refining, the real ultimate purpose of all this work is to ensure that all of our Vermont graduates are set up for success once they finish their high school experience in college and or career, and really that they're prepared to be actively engaged citizens. It's the purpose of all the work that we're doing here, right? So I've created an overview of the timeline because as I've begun interacting more with the field and different community members, there's been just some questions about the logistics of exactly when each piece of this is going into effect. So we just completed phase 1, which was our research and analysis phase. We had the opportunity to look at the current graduation expectations at all of the different supervisory unions and SDs here in Vermont, as well as do some research on what other states' statewide graduation requirements are to learn from their process of implementing that, to see what ideas we might want to bring over to our expectations here in Vermont, and have that inform a couple of models where we have compiled, made kind of mock compilations of what the graduation requirements might be, as a way to have something to put in front of folks for phase 2 that you see here, which is throughout October and November. We're engaging in some really meaningful stakeholder engagement processes, and that gives folks something to respond to and kind of an idea of what some of our learnings have been so far. Phase 3 is the reporting and recommendations. So we want to take the feedback that we're getting from our stakeholder engagement and have that inform what the recommendations are in the report that we submit. And that sets up for phase 4, where of course the State Board of Education has an important role of making decisions around what the statewide graduation requirements are. We give you the report before the end of 2025, and then you all have until the end of June of 2027 to finalize that decision. Some of the questions that I've been encountering have to do with, well, when does this all go into effect, and understanding, that transition period, and especially the decision-making period you have that sets up for that transition period. So starting in the 2027-28 school year, those entering 9th graders are the ones that will be the first that the new statewide graduation requirements would apply to. So it kind of gives a 4-year on-ramp then until they graduate in 2031. And they would be the first graduating class that would be held to the new statewide expectations. This is an ambitious project, of course, and so I'm with an ambitious timeline. I've been framing it as we are eating the elephant one bite at a time. What I described to you on the first slide around the why of why it's important to ensure that students across the state are having equitable opportunity to engage in learning before they finish their high school experience, it sets up for the what. And so the what I'm trying to, by taking one bite at a time, really get concrete and have folks zero in for now on what we are recommending. So we know that we're going to make a recommendation that is aligned to the Vermont Portrait of a Graduate. We're signaling that we're not going to overhaul the system here by taking that approach, trying to offer some reassurance to the field that we know that there's already good work happening. We just want to create more consistency of it across the state. We are going to make a recommendation around a set of content area and transferable skill requirements. And we're also looking at some non-coursework recommendations, including things like the seal of biliteracy, capstone projects that might be included in the recommendations, and things of that nature. We know that that sets up for the how of certain models of instruction or school design models that folks might be using, including PBL hierarchies, MTSS systems, et cetera, that will support the operationalization of. And of course, those are interconnected with the what, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves in terms of the initial recommendation here, so we're trying to stay real focused on the what. Similarly, the promotion criteria, school transitions from elementary to middle to high, et cetera, are things that are yet to come with this process. We have been engaging folks throughout this process and framing it as we're taking a design thinking process approach to this. We're trying to remind folks that, with this We have identified a problem that there's inconsistencies in graduation requirements, and that results in inequities in student experiences. So we framed the question of how do we design a unified set of graduation requirements statewide that creates that consistency, but is still flexible enough to prepare all Vermont students for the success that they have ahead of them. So we spent a lot of time through the research and analysis phase in that generate possibilities. If you click again, I have an animated arrow there, Zoe, thank you.
I thought there was.
And that spits us forward to think about what would have to be true to be able to deliver on those in our schools, what barriers might there be, and you'll see there's another up arrow that might spit us back up into generating more possibilities. We're trying to be really clear in the stakeholder engagement phase that the two models that we are putting in front of folks, it could be that neither of those are the ones that we ultimately include in the recommendation, because it could be that different stakeholders help us identify some barriers that we hadn't taken into consideration yet, and it spits us back up into generating additional possibilities. In terms of the framework that we used for some early decisions during the phase 1 approach, one of the earliest and easiest decisions was the one to support all students toward receiving the same diploma. As we started to look at other states' approaches to statewide graduation requirements, we learned that some states offer an alternative diploma or even a certification rather than a diploma for some students. That's not how Vermont has done it historically. We know that we really value equity here. We know that there's a plethora of research that shows that if students don't receive the same diploma, they receive one of those alternative diplomas or a certification, that has lifelong implications for them in terms of their ability to engage in the workforce and just to have equitable opportunities. So an easy and early decision for us was that we will maintain the approach that Vermont has taken in the past of supporting all students in achieving the same diploma with what our recommendations are. We also made the decision to focus primarily on the academic proficiency parts of the Portrait of a Graduate indicators, as well as some of the other parts that lend themselves to content-specific requirements. So for example, PE requirements and financial literacy requirements fall under the wellness attribute or the well-being attribute of the Portrait of a Graduate. So we kind of are not going to create expectations around all attributes that are included in the Vermont Portrait of a Graduate, because we believe that that would actually limit supervisory unions and schools from doing some more contextualized work around some of the other whole child, whole graduate approaches that are most important to their communities. So we're selecting the ones to focus on at the state level with that decision. We're also going to quantify the content area requirements as credits, but I want to be very clear that we do not mean the Carnegie unit implication of a set required amount of seat time with that. We are loosely meaning that 1 credit would mean 1 year, the equivalent of a year-long course, or an equivalent learning experience. We're still aligning to Act 77, flexible pathways, personalized learning approaches. But we really believe that in order to empower students and their families to navigate the expectations and support their students in achieving what the expectations of the graduation requirements will be, that we need to use a familiar and well-understood unit of measure for them to be able to do so. So that is another decision that we've made. And then lastly, we've made the decision of taking the approach of transferable skills being connected to and embedded within academic content, because we know that when they are emphasized in the context of academic content and academic classes, that it becomes more applicable to the students' future careers and lives. So for example, communication as a transferable skill is one that I'm using right now. I'm using it in the context of a specific purpose of something that I'm academic content that I'm trying to communicate to the group. So it needs to be not in isolation, but connected to the work that students are trying to do. The Portrait of a Graduate, just a quick reminder, wanted to pop up what it is. If you click one more time, you'll see what I already voiced over, that we're not requiring all SUs or SDs to use the Vermont Portrait of a Graduate, and that's why we're not trying to capture all of those attributes in the Vermont one in the recommendations that we plan to make. And then similarly, credits as a unit of measure, the approach of using credit as the terminology for the unit of measure is already in the EQS. We know that that's something that'll need to be revised because right now it's about local graduation requirements, but the language is already in there that when credits are used, it should specify the proficiencies demonstrated in order to achieve the credit, and it's not about seat time spent based on learning. Yes, and as I did an inventory, right, of our supervisory unions and SDs and the way that they're currently approaching. I was curious what units of measures they're currently using. 86 of them are already using credit. And if I include as well other similar units of measures, semesters, courses, years, classes, it actually increases all the way to 98% of them are already taking a very similar approach. So we feel pretty confident moving forward in that direction. So to close out phase 1, our deliverable by the end of this was to create 2 to 3 models of proposed content graduation requirements, as well as a list of non-coursework requirements like the seal of biliteracy or capstones that I mentioned earlier, so that we had something to engage stakeholders with during phase 2. As I mentioned, we did that by looking both within the state as well as outside of the state to do a comparative analysis, and that's what informed we ended up with 2 specific models that we're starting to socialize. And then informing our approach to those models, I wanted to highlight that we're taking a really interdisciplinary and elective concentration approach to this. We really deeply believe that in high school, it's very important for students to have the opportunity to go deeper into their areas of interest so that it feels relevant and engaging to them. It needs to be connected to their personalized learning plans. And we also know that in order for students to be able to do that meaningfully at the high school level, they have to have had some exposure opportunities earlier in their educational career. So we're thinking deeply as well about what exposure we need to have happen in the pre-K through 8 part of the system around world languages, career tech, the sciences, the arts, both visual and performing. And lastly, we are going to take the approach where if students were to complete a course like Algebra 1 as an 8th grader, so prior to their high school years, that we would still count that toward the graduation requirements if we were to include Algebra 1 as one of the requirements. So students completing learning earlier in their trajectory that are spelled out as part of what our recommendations would be, we would acknowledge that if that was completed and not ask them to repeat it once they got to the high school level. So I just wanted to share with you all high-level feedback that we've gotten so far. It's primarily been in very small select groups as I've been making bids to be invited onto people's home turf. As much as we can, I'm taking the approach of asking to be invited into existing spaces, conferences that are happening already through many of the different Vermont associations or other events that are happening for educators across the state. I think there's power to meeting them where they are instead of asking them to come to an additional meeting to meet with us. And so far I've been meeting with the heads of many of those organizations and kind of previewing this for you. So it's still some very preliminary feedback. However, overall, we're hearing an appreciation for the approach that we're taking, the flexibility of it, the clarity that it provides, the fact that we are focusing on interdisciplinary instruction and student agency considerations. We are also hearing from the field that there are some very real concerns about their potential for misalignment between their current instructional expectations and what the future requirements might be. And it's resulting in questions about what to focus on right now during this transitional period. We've been trying to make it very clear that if they are seeing gaps in instructional rigor or coordinated curriculum at this point, they should not hesitate to go ahead and address those. There are children in front of them right now. We know that we should not just be pausing the important work that's already underway while we wait for this decision to be made. And we acknowledge that it's very difficult to be in this time of uncertainty while they wait for more clarity. And lastly, there have already been some identification of specific barriers that we need to take under consideration. And so we've already been making some tweaks and adjustments to the models themselves before we prepare for a larger rollout and engagement of it. Primarily that November 4th statewide conference, there's going to be 350 folks that we've invited, and we've created the space for about half of them to engage in the graduation requirement track that Zoe mentioned earlier. So for next steps, as I said, we are underway with the stakeholder engagement of phase 2. We're going to compile the information and feedback that we get from stakeholders to identify trends and make sure that it informs the recommendations that we ultimately make. Phase 3 is shortly on the horizon because December is going to be here before we know it. And so we will start drafting, reviewing, synthesizing the feedback to refine the recommendations that we will be submitting to the state board for their consideration. And we're just continuing to have conversations about what parts of the statewide graduation requirements live at the state level and which ones are most appropriate to stay at the local level. Kind of the way that I was speaking about the Vermont Portrait of a Graduate as a starting place, but not us creating requirements around all of that because we acknowledge the need to contextualize some of the work locally. We're still having those conversations and still open through this process of feedback to which things are most appropriately included in the statewide graduation requirements versus which ones we want to be able to be contextualized and made at a more local level. And I believe my last slide is an overview. This isn't inclusive of everyone yet, but of the stakeholder feedback engagements that we have on the horizon. As I said, there's some additional ones. A major one is that November 4th one at the statewide planning retreat, where we know that we'll have representatives from all of the SUs across the states, as well as some higher education representatives, independent schools, legislators, yourselves, students are invited as well. That really is going to be just such a meaningful opportunity to get a large amount of feedback all in one space and let people be interacting with each other to discuss this topic before we move forward as well. That's what I've got for the overview of the update. Any questions that this elicits?
I have a question.
Sure.
So if I'm understanding, you are going to develop several different, I guess, profiles of graduation requirements, right? So it would be this much world language, this much math, right? We know that some school districts and some high schools don't have those requirements now, and to bring those requirements on are going to require additional resources.
Right.
So what I didn't see as a part of your presentation is there going to be some sort of resource analysis or cost analysis that goes along with this? Because I think that's really important. Right, when we do this kind of work, we need to be really clear about what the expectations are around implementation and resources.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you don't have world language right now, and it's going to be implemented 2 years, I was also looking at your timeline, I'm thinking about budget cycles, right? I know they're doing their budget now, but that next budget's coming up really quick, and all of a sudden now you're a small high school that has graduating classes of 12, and you don't offer world languages, you are going to have to include in your 27, 20, 28 resources to do that going forward, correct?
That's right.
So I would just encourage resource analysis as a part of this.
Yeah. And I think too, what we're being intentional about is after we bring this recommendation forward to you in December, we recognize that there's a longer ramp for us to iterate. And so through that period of time is where we'll be able to do a deeper analysis of the operational considerations that absolutely do come with some resource analysis needs.
Right.
So, we're mindful that we're working under a very short time frame to bring forward to you something concrete that is built upon, really a valuable framework and feedback from the field. But we will continue to iterate on that. And you noticed in that stakeholder engagement, we're also creating more opportunities for student engagement. We're partnering with Up for Learning. So those sessions actually won't begin until the new calendar year. That'll be another time point. And Erin's captured already some of those considerations. She highlighted a few just in the conversations that we had. But the December report won't come with a full resource analysis, but we recognize that that'll be part of it.
Right, because because these graduation requirements now become part and parcel of our adequacy standards in the state, right? And so any cost modeling that's done, whether it's evidence-based or professional judgment or cost function, need to take into account
That's correct.
these as new resource requirements, right?
These would be some of the inputs that we
They
should
would have to,
consider.
the inputs are gonna have to change,
Yes.
right? And that's gonna put a lot of pressure on districts that are not currently operating at scale.
Some of the implementation, though, does align with larger districts, so.
I wasn't, I'm just saying, right? Like, so if you took our current footprint.
Yes.
I don't know where we move, but if you take the current footprint and we just overlay this on top of the current footprint, these graduation requirements are going to have significant resource implications for small school districts that are operating small high schools. And I think we have to be really clear about that, and we have to be really clear about what that means for base funding, right, amounts and assumptions in our adequacy studies. Because this is a fundamental shift in process and outcomes.
Okay, so I think that while, the timing is challenging, right? This is a really accelerated timeline to bring forward a recommendation. We actually think that timeline is necessary so that it can be incorporated as part of.
I'm not arguing there's a
right?
timeline. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
I'm trying to pull together
I
in
hear
my
you.
own head,
Yeah.
my background being in what it is.
Yes.
The first thing I start to think about this is, we have to think also about the resource implications of this.
Right.
And we are in an environment right now where cost is a consideration and a hotly debated consideration, and this is going to drive costs. This will drive costs.
Or close schools.
Well, that's another, that
Well,
could.
it'll also drive clarity,
I
right,
agree.
around how we prioritize funding.
I-
I do think there'll be broader conversations too as we think through staffing.
That's
and
right.
requirements.
That's right.
So the timing, I think, is right in terms of bringing this forward in December, because there are much larger implications as we think about
That's right.
funding. We think about, reopening quality standards, some of those.
That's right. That's right.
What are we going to be tight
That's
on?
right.
What are we going to be loose on, right? If
That's right.
this is the standard of excellence, we need to make
Absolutely.
sure that our entire system is resourced to deliver on that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly, you and I are on the same page. I just didn't see anything in the presentation that named
not there
that. But I
We'll
just.
name it for you. We'll
Thank
name
you.
it.
I'm gonna name it now because this is part, if the way that this is progressing, this becomes part of the adequacy framework.
Yes.
That's
Right.
right.
That's right.
I, in fact, removed a slide that addressed it because I only had 15 minutes to present it to you. Yeah, we're aware of it. Zoe's right. I don't know that by December we'll have the opportunity to create an analysis of it. We also know that this is an opportunity to make sure that students in those smaller schools have access to the same learning opportunities
Absolutely.
that other students do.
Absolutely, as we should.
Yes.
I'm not arguing,
No,
I'm
no,
not
I know
arguing
you're
against
not.
this. I'm just saying we need to be really transparent about the resource assumptions for two reasons. One, we are going to quickly come up on budget cycles. And although we're doing budget right now for 26, 27, right, that budget, so this involves hiring, which it probably will, and staffing changes. Those conversations are going to start next spring. Really.
I think you're pointing to something that we've been describing. This is not just a requirement, this is actually part of the transformation.
Yeah.
That's why we're
Right.
really framing this.
It's part
as
of our
this is-
adequacy framework.
Yeah, it's setting the standard for
Yep.
academic excellence,
Yep.
which
That's
definitely
right.
dovetails to adequacy. Absolutely.
So I'm curious, and I'm going to pare this back to the beginning, but is it going to be something as simple as, all graduates must have X credits in a foreign language, X credits in math?
Parts of it, we
Okay.
anticipate, will offer that level of clarity.
And are you going
parts
to
of
drill down from there and be like algebra, geometry?
In certain content areas, yes, we expect to be at that level of specificity. And then we also are building in, so for example, for math in one of our models, we have Algebra 1 included as one of the requirements. And then we also have a number of math electives that students would need to complete, a number of credits that align to their college and career pathway. So the flexibility is still built in, and we're saying, here's the bar that all students are expected to meet as part of their graduation.
And if you have a student who struggles in math, I know, like where my kids went to high school, there was, AP of whatever the topic was, and then there was, sort of the honors, and then there was regular, and then there was, sort of the, the more helpful, hands-on type. But and I'm assuming you're still going to keep that sort of the different flavors of how to satisfy a course.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, including as well CTE. So CTE, for example, has their own math courses that we've been working closely with the CTE folks as well. So we're being very intentional about representing all of the different school settings that this might apply to. And that's the part that I'm, of the flexibility that we're building in. We've actually gotten really positive feedback from CTE folks so far, for example, because they can see the way that we've taken their context into consideration and the way that we've modeled these out.
Yeah, thank you. Sarah?
Just a quick question from a former role I played, but do you anticipate stakeholder engagement with the business community or higher education and how this rolls out?
We've invited higher education to the November 4th event. We're hopeful that they will be participating in this track. We've had some early conversations with some specific higher education leaders. I also recently met actually just with John, who was at the start of our meeting today, from Champlain College, as well as the Credit Union Association in Vermont. They, of course, have a vested interest in financial literacy being a component of the recommendations that we make, and they understand the connection between that to adults being able to make good, wise decisions around that throughout their livelihood and their engagement in the community. So yes, those are just kind of a couple of examples to the spirit of your question.
There's the State Workforce Development Board, which I believe you're a member of, but they also have a subcommittee on this, if that's another resource you want to get invited into. One of those.
Yes, maybe I should close with a plug for if you know of additional opportunities that we can, I would love for those to be passed along to us. We really enjoyed, for example, we just got to attend the Vermont Music Educators Association meeting, and it was really lovely to have that stakeholder group give us some early feedback on this.
Other comments?
Online.
I don't see any hands online.
Thank you for your work on this.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you for the update.
Okay. All right, future meeting planning. I'll go through my list here. As usual, commission updates, secretary report, committee updates. As we are sort of getting towards some December deadlines, I can imagine that a lot of those things might be more meaty. Independent school approvals, I think we've got another batch, am I right, Tom, that's going to be ready for November?
I'm not 100% sure, but I would expect so.
Okay, great. Potentially DQS waivers from districts. There weren't any that were filed this month, but we'll keep it as a possibility. Potentially discussion vote on the proposed definition of by necessity.
I think that's the hope at the December meeting. Oh, I'm
So-
sorry, November meeting, yes. I think that's the hope, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm getting months.
They're all coming quickly.
This year needs to be over.
Okay, we'll have more conversation on statewide graduation requirements, and then potentially board guidance on whether an approved independent school that no longer meets the requirements.
The tuition transition guidance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Section 22.
correct, of Act 73.
What I would envision, if this works for you, is well in advance of that, have some sort of a communication that goes to board members, maybe a couple weeks before your meeting, to say, here's some thinking on this, and invite, if individuals want to, have conversations about that analysis, so that you'll be ready to potentially, if you want to take board action, you will have had an opportunity for people to see things and vote on something they've had an opportunity to react to.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to invite the secretary to share, or maybe help us better understand the legislation that you're circulating on CTE, since we've got our committee and we're supposed to be standing that up soon.
So we're not really circulating legislation. That was draft language that was prepared last session and there's a group that was looking at that to build upon. We can certainly provide an update on
Yeah,
the
I think that'd be
conversations.
helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks.
So it's not new legislative language, just want to clarify that, but there's definitely work that's being done and thinking about what can be brought forward this session to modernize our career and technical
I just want to make
education
sure
system.
that, because we got to deal with the rules on this. stuff, so-
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd be happy to provide an update.
Thank you.
The other thing I might offer, I can include this in my secretary's report, but I would love the opportunity to share what we learned from the planning retreat.
Do you want that to be its own agenda item?
Will you have enough
If
time
I
to
think I
pull
would
all that
devote,
together?
I can at least provide a preliminary
okay.
update. I think it would just be valuable to close the loop on some of the key themes that
Oh,
we
I think it
heard.
would. I just didn't want to pin you down to have to do that 2 weeks later. You could do that in December too, right? Just, if you think you're ready, that'd be great.
Anything else? All right.
And that's going to be remote.
We will be remote. So we are, for the winter, back to remote. We will start thinking about meeting in person again in April and May. And I will just forecast now that, Caleb, we will be coming to visit you. All right, if there's nothing further from the board, public to be heard. If any members of the public wish to be heard, you can raise your hand. Yes? It's helpful, yeah, if you can come up.
Hi, Chris Benway again, Director of Special Services here in Slate Valley. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you to Secretary Saunders and for Katie Smith for giving a shout out to our Medicaid reinvestment planning and the creative use of those monies. So I wanted to follow that up with a shout out to all of our special educators and special services personnel that do all that they need to do to be able to collect those reinvestment funds for our district, because as you can see, they provide some incredible services to our larger district, and we're very proud of those efforts. The other thing I wanted to do is just offer a couple of comments on the Act 73 report that was shared earlier, and one, wanted to encourage this board and the legislature, as others have done, to finish the work of Act 173. I think that all of the groups could agree that that was good legislation, and it's good on behalf of Vermont students and learners, and would really like to see us look at the assessment and the accountability features that haven't been completed around that. The other thing I wanted to give a shout out for is gratitude for the restructuring of the agency of education and the elevation of special education back to its own division. That's been missing for some time, and I think the voice of some of our most vulnerable students and the advocacy for them has been diminished, and it's going to be recognized again through that restructuring. So I want to acknowledge and express gratitude for that. The other is in Cassie's presentation, she expressed recognition of the impact of teacher shortages, and I just want to underscore the recognition of that, and not just the shortages in special education, but the shortages in general education, which in some cases, though not intended, because we've got folks working really hard on provisional license or emergency licenses, our general ed classrooms in some cases have become more restrictive, less accessible to all students. And so that's something I just want to recognize. I don't think it could be underscored enough that it's not just about the shortages of special educators and special ed providers, but it's the impact that the lack of qualified general educators has on kids' access to the general ed environment. The other thing I wanted to know about, we talk a lot about the number of licensed special educators in the state of Vermont, and I would just like to encourage us to disaggregate that data a little bit more in terms of who are the licensed special educators and who are available to work in the capacity of a licensed special educator. When I look at my special education administrative team, the 4 of us all carry special education teacher licenses. We're not available to teach. Some days we end up having to do that because of staff shortages, but I think it's important to recognize those that are licensed, and those are actually the number that are actually available for work as special educators in the state. And lastly, what I wanted to just mention was I want to thank you for coming to Slate Valley. With regard to those teacher shortages, I think we as a culture and as communities talk a lot about the hardships of teaching. and the struggles and the trials, and it is a very tough job. But I think what you saw today in the presentations and in the videos that were shared was the true joy and pride in teaching and learning, and I don't think that we can underscore that enough as a community and as a culture and as a society. So I want to thank you for coming to Slate Valley and giving us a chance to showcase some of those things that we're really proud of, that give us real joy as teachers and administrators and learners. I think it's really important that we, advocate and entice others to come into our field here in Slate Valley and here in Vermont. So thank you.
Thank you. And I will say again, it is remarkable, the number of years that people have been working here. Truly remarkable. Yep.
Just one little side note on that, because when I brought my special ed team together at the beginning of the year, we did a little summary of the number of years of experience that we had, and it totaled 561 years on my special ed professional team, averaging over 22 years of experience. So it's something that we're really proud of.
Yeah, thank you. Any other members of the public? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I was going to let you do it.
Is there a second?
thank
I'll
you.
second.
All right, all those in
Sorry,
favor,
the menu
please say
was
aye.
left.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we
Thank
stand
you.
in adjournment. Thank you
Appears to
all.
be a
Have a great
unanimous
afternoon.
decision